Speaking of which, the material of this fragment was quite extraordinary. It was a spirit or that Ning Fan had never seen before. If he melted this fragment and added some other materials into it, he should be able to refine an extremely good shield. However, this was unnecessary. Ning Fan did not have the confidence to refine a Xiantian magical treasure with this small fragment. Was it that easy to refine a Xiantian magical treasure? He might be able to refine a shield, but its grade would most likely not be high. In that case, it would be better to just choose a Xiantian level defensive magic treasure. Why would he need to forge his own shield? In that case, what was the point of choosing this shield treasure fragment? Shaking his head, Ning Fan shifted his gaze away to look at other things. Although Dao Man Shan did not open his eyes, he knew everything that happened here like the back of his hand. This boy doesn't intend to choose this item. Dao Man Shan sighed in his heart but did not say anything. No matter what choice Ning Fan made, he would not interfere. However, he had been waiting for many years for the inheritor. Thus, he felt a little regretful. What a pity! This boy is the fourth person who has the chance to obtain the Dao Barbarian's approval. Is he going to miss the chance to obtain the Dao Barbarian's sacred relic as well? Just like the previous three inheritors, he did not have the courage to choose the sacred relic fragment. The fourth barbarian god was originally very nervous. However, after realizing that Ning Fan did not pay too much attention to the sacred relic fragment, he immediately felt relieved. It seems like this boy doesn't really care about the sacred relic fragment. I've been worrying too much. The sacred relic of my Dao barbarian lineage won't fall into his hands. That's good. Ning Fan's eyes wandered through the many relics in this place. In the end, there were only 4 items that he desired to obtain. Among all the magic treasures, the one he wanted the most was not the most powerful one, the heaven-sweeping pearl, but the undergarment of the female saintess, the 42 worlds red heavenly silk. The reason why he chose this item was definitely not because he had a special hobby. Instead, it was because this treasure had a special use. This red heavenly silk was an innate grade magic treasure. Its defensive power was extremely strong. In terms of power alone, it was not the strongest among all the innate grade magic treasures in this place. However, according to Dao Man Shan's introduction, this treasure could protect the host's mind and spirit during the immeasurable tribulation. It could increase the host's chance of becoming a Sage Realm expert by around 30%. According to Dao Man Shan, the immeasurable tribulation was a great tribulation that one must go through to become a Sage Realm expert. It was extremely dangerous and it was extremely rare for it to appear. Only by attracting the immeasurable tribulation would a quasi-saint have the chance to attain the 3rd step. However, during the ancient times, only 1 or 2 quasi-saints could cultivate to the perfection realm and attract the immeasurable tribulation among 1,000 quasi-saints. Among those who successfully attracted the immeasurable tribulation, only 10% of them could pass the tribulation successfully. 90% of the quasi-saints would die during the immeasurable tribulation. It was enough to show how dangerous this tribulation was. Putting aside the innate grade of the red heavenly silk, the 30% chance of passing the immeasurable tribulation alone was enough to make Ning Fan's heart move. If he chooses the red heavenly silk, it would certainly be much easier for him to attain the Sage Realm in the future. Besides, this red heavenly silk itself was an extremely good innate grade magic treasure. Its defensive power was especially extraordinary. Since it could be used as a doodoo by a female sage and be worn close to her body, how could its defensive power be low? Defense was just too important. Ning Fan had countless offensive methods, but he did not have many defensive methods. The defensive ability of the 3 flowers converging prominence was already not enough for him to use for a long time. The physical defense of his ancient devil body was also not enough for him to use in battles above the void-shedding realm. The 7-star lamp, a 12th Nirvana-grade defensive magic treasure that he obtained with great difficulty, was detonated by Ning Fan. The life illusion pill that he used to save his life was also used up. Currently, Ning Fan urgently needed to increase his defensive methods to protect himself. This red heavenly silk of the 42 worlds was indeed a good choice. If he has the red heavenly silk to protect himself, He was confident that he could withstand the attacks of an immortal venerable's head-on without dying. Even if he faces the attacks of immortal kings or immortal emperors, he would still have a certain level of strength to protect himself. Compared to this item, the heaven-rippling pearl was much inferior. Among the many magic treasures here, the heaven-rippling pearl was undoubtedly the strongest. How could a magic treasure that could injure a sage realm not be strong? This treasure was absolutely invincible against anyone below the sage realm. It could even kill an immortal emperor realm cultivator like a dog. But there was a prerequisite. In order to unleash the strongest power of this pearl, he must use the blood of a saint to refine it. This was a little troublesome. Ning Fan knew that he could not get his hands on the blood of a saint. Where should he get it from? In this world, is there still a saint? Is there still a saint's blood left behind? Without the blood of a saint, this bead would only be able to unleash a tenth of its true might at most. It would only be slightly stronger than other Khanate treasures, so it wouldn't be too heaven-defying. With Ning Fan's current cultivation base and the heaven-sweeping pearl in his hand, he could at most fight against a high-level immortal venerable who was 1 or 2 levels higher than him. This was obviously of little value. How could an offensive magical treasure that couldn't kill the enemy in a single strike be more practical than a defensive magical treasure that could protect one's life? Other than the red heavenly sash, he was also very interested in the heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma. In the end, magic treasures were just external objects. It was far less practical than directly raising one's cultivation. If it was not for the fact that it could increase the chances of becoming a sage, the red armillary sash was definitely not as practical as the heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma. If one did not die after consuming this Ganoderma, they would have the cultivation of a demi-sage. If he has the cultivation base of a quasi-saint realm expert, why would he need to choose an innate magic treasure? Cultivation was fundamental. A Du-Zhen cultivator with a primordial magic treasure would never be able to defeat an empty-handed quasi-sage. Should I choose this heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma? It would be a lie to say that he was not tempted. However, Ning Fan did not choose the heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma immediately. His expression was extremely cautious. This item could allow one to attain the cultivation base of a quasi-saint immediately. It was just too heaven-defying. However, the heavenly Tao was a cycle. Things would always move in the opposite direction when they reach an extreme. There are gains and losses. The more heaven-defying an item was, the more flaws it would have. For example, the immortal body of the undying great emperor could not even kill a desolate saint. However, it was very difficult for him to become a saint. After consuming the heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma, one could directly attain the cultivation base of a quasi-saint. However, there was a precondition: one must not die after consuming it. If a mortal did not explode and die after consuming an immortal pill, he would also have the chance to become an immortal in a single step. However, in this world, there were not many cultivators who could become an immortal in a single step. Almost all those who tried to become an immortal in a single step had died. Ning Fan's eyes glowed with green light. The more he looked at it, the deeper his frown became. After a long time, he withdrew his gaze and sighed softly. When he looked at the heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma again, his eyes were much colder than before. As expected, this heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma has a huge flaw. The medicinal power of this heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma was extremely domineering. However, due to the restriction of the rules, it could not be consumed separately. It had to be consumed whole. Otherwise, its medicinal power would be greatly reduced. If 10,000 people consume the heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma, I'm afraid there would be 9,999 of them who could not endure the medicinal power and would directly explode and die. In order to endure the medicinal power without dying, one must at least have the physical body of a sage realm expert. Isn't this a joke? Since ancient times, how many people in the second step possessed the physical body of a third step cultivator? How many second step cultivators are qualified to consume the heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma without dying? This is another item that is very useless. When Ning Fan cultivates his physical body to the third step, He would be able to fight against a Sage Realm expert with just his physical body. At that time, would he still care about the magic power of a quasi-Sage Realm expert? At that time, would it be necessary for him to consume the heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma? If he chooses the heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma, he would certainly not be foolish enough to wait until his physical body reaches the third step before consuming it. He would divide the heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma into tens of parts and consume them bit by bit. In this way, the medicinal power of the spirit Ganoderma would be less than 10%. It would not be enough for him to break through to the quasi-sage realm. It might not even be enough for him to advance from the crossing truth realm to the shedding void realm. This item could improve Ning Fan's cultivation base. However, the degree of improvement would not be too heaven-defying. Heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma. Ning Fan stared at the heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma for a long time. Eventually, he moved his eyes away and looked at the 8th Tribulation spiritual puppet. This item also made his heart beat faster. If he chooses this spiritual puppet, he would immediately have an immortal Emperor Realm fighter who is loyal to him. To Barbarian Dao Shan, who had a high standard, the 8th Tribulation spiritual puppet could at most be used to guard his abode. However, Ning Fan was different. The place he lived in was the 4 heavens and 9 worlds. It was a world where a quasi-sage realm expert and an immortal Emperor Realm expert could do whatever they want. On the surface, there were only 16 immortal emperors in the entire Eastern Heaven immortal world. A few of them died in the Sun Luo War. Among them, there were only a few who had attained the 8th Tribulation spiritual puppet. The cultivation base of an eternal 8th Tribulation spiritual puppet could definitely be considered as the top combat power in the 4 heavens immortal world. If he chooses this spiritual puppet, there would be very few people who could kill him within 4 days. This spiritual puppet tempted Ning Fan. However, it also had a huge flaw. The flaw was that this spiritual puppet was just too old and outdated. In short, the durability of this spiritual puppet was already running low. It could be used a few more times at most, and then it would completely break down. It was practical but not durable. The 4th item that tempted Ning Fan was a scroll with a blood lotus drawn on it. A red-robed child was sitting on top of the blood lotus. He was performing hand seals with both of his hands. His appearance was vivid and lifelike, as if he could walk out from the painting. If one takes a closer look, the red-robed child in the painting looked somewhat similar to Barbarian Dao Shan. This scroll contains the strongest cultivation method in my life, blood lotus scripture. This is a body refinement cultivation method. It was passed down from an ancient immortal sovereign who had attained the Tao through his own body. Unfortunately, what I obtained is just an incomplete scroll. This cultivation method can be cultivated by immortal venerables. It can temper one's physical body step by step. If one can cultivate all the cultivation realms recorded in the incomplete scroll, one can even attain the 3rd step when they are at the 2nd step. Ning Fan did not lack high-grade cultivation methods. However, it was his first time encountering a body refinement cultivation method that could allow one to attain the 3rd step. Immortal Sovereign was a unique title for 4th step cultivators. This was a cultivation method that was left behind by a 4th step body refinement cultivator. It was definitely more profound than the yin-yang transformation and chaotic loop art. Unfortunately, it was just an incomplete scroll. Moreover, things like cultivation methods would not be put to use immediately. One would need to spend a lot of time to cultivate it in order to display its benefits. It was practical, but it could not be put to use immediately. Moreover, it would take an unknown number of years to attain the 3rd step body with this cultivation method. Red Heavenly Silk, Heaven Opening Spirit Ganoderma, 8th Tribulation Puppet, Blood Lotus Scripture. Which one should I choose? While Ning Fan was pondering, his eyes suddenly turned cold. He had sensed something. At this moment, there was an unusual change in the lake outside. The lake water that was as dark as ink began to boil. Scorching hot bubbles rose and evaporated. To be more precise, it was not the lake water that was boiling. It was the blood that was dissolved in the lake water. That was the black blood that flowed from the undying Great Emperor's 4th Devil Star after it was destroyed. The previously deathly still black blood seemed to have sensed something at this moment, and there was an excited emotion. At the lakeside, the strange eyeball looked at the boiling lake water in confusion. He could not understand why the lake water would have such an unusual change. Strange. Why is the undying demon blood in the outside world suddenly boiling? This fragment. Ning Fan's eyes suddenly flashed and he looked at the fragment of the shield treasure. Not only the undying demon blood had an unusual change, but the fragment of the shield treasure also had an unusual change. The dark red fragment was giving off a blazing red light as if it had been calcined by a blazing flame. Moreover, there was an aura that was extremely similar to the undying Tao law that was constantly spreading from the fragment. But it was not similar. The power that the fragment contained was obviously the undying power, which was the same as the undying Great Emperor's power. This fragment. Before Ning Fan could continue looking at it, the fragment of the shield treasure suddenly flew out on its own. It turned into a ray of blazing red light and flew towards Ning Fan. When it was 3 zhang away from Ning Fan, the fragment suddenly slowed down and landed on Ning Fan's palm obediently. What's going on? I haven't chosen the relic of the saint yet. Why did this fragment fly towards me on its own? The moment the fragment flew into Ning Fan's hand, be it the heaven-battling shield of the ancient country or the other bronze boxes, all of them disappeared. Does this mean that I can only choose this fragment of the shield treasure and cannot choose anything else? Has the choice already ended? I haven't even started. Ning Fan's forehead was filled with black lines. Isn't this too much of a scam? Can I choose again? Ning Fan shifted his gaze towards Dao Man Shan and realized that the latter's expression was one of shock that he had never seen before. A dignified heaven-opening artifact actually took the initiative to recognize him as its master. Dao Man Shan was greatly astonished. After a long while, he finally saw some clues and thought to himself, I see. This young man has a trace of the 4th fragment. No wonder. The 4th barbarian god was even more astonished. She could not figure out what was going on. She really could not understand it. Ning Fan obviously had no intention of choosing the fragment of the holy artifact. Why did the fragment fly towards Ning Fan on its own and fly into his hands? How could there be such a thing as a pie falling from the sky? That was the fragment of a heaven-opening artifact. Moreover, it was not an ordinary heaven-opening artifact. It was a supreme treasure that was ranked 19th among all the magic treasures in the world since the beginning of time. Even if this treasure was just a fragment, it should have its own pride. Even a saint would not be able to subdue this fragment without tens of thousands of years of refinement. However, such a supreme treasure that was so difficult to subdue had voluntarily given itself to Ning Fan during the first encounter. Can someone explain to me what is going on? Rumble. Between heaven and earth, black lightning began to appear unceasingly. Countless rays of light flew out from the fragment of the shield treasure in Ning Fan's hand, forming an incomparably huge shadow of a shield in the sky. Bit by bit, it appeared between heaven and earth. The shadow of the shield was immeasurably tall. Its height seemed to have exceeded the limits of heaven and earth. Its material seemed to be copper but not copper. It was dark red in color and there were densely packed undying Tao laws intertwining on it. There were countless shadows of giants floating on the surface of the shield. Upon closer inspection, each of the giants held a shield in their left hand and a sword in their right hand. Their bodies were clad in dark red armor. The strange thing was that each of the giants was illusory and there seemed to be cultivators inside their bodies. At the moment when the shadow of the giant shield appeared, all the innate magic treasures in the area trembled as if they were afraid of it. All of them extinguished their light and lost their luster. Innate magic treasures were actually afraid of it. I am the 6th fragment of the heaven-opening artifact of the chaotic Kuan sacred sect, the breath of the 4th fragment. Remembrance. There was no sound coming from it, but Ning Fan seemed to have heard those voices from the gigantic shadow of the shield. It also felt like those voices were coming from the fragment in his hand. He didn't understand what the voice was saying. It was intermittent and he couldn't really understand it. The only thing he could feel was the aura of a magic treasure on the shadow of the shield which was beyond his understanding. In front of the shadow of the shield, he actually had an unprecedented feeling of insignificance. It was as if this ancient shadow of the shield was heaven and earth, the great Tao and all the rules of heaven and earth. It was as if there was nothing that could restrain this shield and there was no force that could break its defense. Even if the heavens fell and the earth split apart, time would not be able to destroy this shield. What is the shield? Ning Fan stared at the shadow of the giant shield in the sky. For some reason, he suddenly thought of the ancient bell of samsara above the sea of clouds when he was at the mortal severing realm. The bell of samsara was a magic treasure that surpassed the power of the cultivators of the four heavens. No cultivator of the four heavens could subdue it. That magic treasure had already surpassed the innate realm. The shadow of the giant shield in front of him actually gave off a feeling that was extremely similar to the bell of samsara. It was as if they were magic treasures of the same level. The sixth fragment of the heaven-opening artifact? Could this be the origin of the fragment of the shield treasure? Ning Fan did not know what the heaven-opening artifact was, but he guessed that it was a magic treasure that was at a higher level than innate magic treasures. This fragment seemed to be even more extraordinary than what he had imagined. Perhaps it was not a bad choice to choose this fragment. The fourth fragment, Brahmanis, meeting with me. At this moment, another change took place. The undying devil blood in the lake outside suddenly began to rush into Ning Fan's body. On the surface, it looked as if Ning Fan was absorbing that power. What's going on? This young man doesn't possess the undying devil body, but he could actually absorb the undying power in the undying Great Emperor's blood. The eyeball was shocked. This drop of blood contained a trace of the undying Great Emperor's inheritance. Only those who possessed the undying physique could obtain this inheritance. How could Ning Fan obtain it? The eyeball was not the only one who was shocked. Even Ning Fan himself was shocked. Even though his consciousness was trapped in the ancient barbarian tomb, he could still sense the changes in the outside world. He could clearly feel the power of the undying Great Emperor's devil blood flowing into his body at a crazy rate. I miss home very much, but my home is no longer here. This time, it was the undying Great Emperor's voice that resounded beside Ning Fan's ears. My first home is the Black Mountain tribe in the ancient barbarian world. However, the Black Mountain tribe was destroyed by the Z-Wei immortal cultivator. I lost my first home. My second home is the Z-Do immortal domain. However, it was destroyed by the tribulation spirit's invasion. Perhaps I still have a home. Before I was born, it was once the fourth fragment of the God-exterminating shield of the ancient country. Due to an accident, it escaped from the ancient barbarian tomb and was reincarnated as a human. The undying power doesn't come from nowhere. It's the power that the God-exterminating shield of the ancient country deduced itself. The intermittent voice resounded beside Ning Fan's ears. The information was too fragmented and Ning Fan could not understand it clearly. However, he still vaguely heard some keywords such as the fourth fragment. The fragment of the shield flew into his hand on its own. At the same time, the undying devil blood in the outside world also changed. There seems to be some kind of connection between the undying Great Emperor and this fragment. The sixth fragment, the fourth fragment. The God-exterminating shield of the ancient country. You have the sixth fragment. With the power of the sixth fragment, it's enough to give birth to the undying power. The undying power can't come from nowhere. Only the God-exterminating shield of the ancient country can create it. This devil star is my fourth devil star. It contains a trace of the chi of the fourth fragment. Impart to you the Tao of Undying. With the Tao of Undying, you can control the fragment. Pain. Ning Fan felt a sharp pain and a stream of black blood flowed out from his right eye. There was also a faint purple star that was faintly discernible in his right eye. That was the power that belonged to the fourth devil star in the right eye of the undying Great Emperor. However, it had now gone into Ning Fan's right eye. That power was too massive and it seemed to clash with Ning Fan's yin-yang devil veins. It was very difficult for Ning Fan to absorb it. However, it still managed to enter his body. After the appearance of this faint purple star, Ning Fan could clearly feel that there was a mysterious connection between him and the fragment of the shield treasure in his hand. It was a very mysterious connection. It was as if the shield treasure fragment in front of him was a part of his body. At the same time, it also felt like he was a part of that fragment. This is not a useless fragment. With this connection, Ning Fan could feel an immense power from the fragment. The faint purple star rotated in Ning Fan's right eye. The power of the shield treasure fragment in his hand was gradually stimulated by Ning Fan. The power of the fragment is still there and I can still use it. Since I was forced to choose this fragment, I might as well see how powerful it is. Ning Fan did not say a word. His mind sank into the fragment as if he was communicating with it. After a long time, the shadow of the giant shield disappeared. After a long time, the faint purple star in Ning Fan's right eye stopped rotating and disappeared as if it had never appeared before. However, the shield treasure fragment in Ning Fan's hand became redder and the light it gave off became stronger. It was like a precious pearl that had been covered in dust for many years was being polished at this moment. The light became brighter and brighter. In the end, it became as dazzling as the sun. No one could look at it directly. As for Ning Fan, the light in his eyes became brighter. He realized that this fragment was much stronger than he had imagined. This item is the fragment of a heaven creation magical treasure. That heaven creation magical treasure seems to be called the ancient country god exterminating shield. Even though there is only a fragment of this shield, the power contained within it still surpasses any innate magical treasure. This power can still be used. The way to use it seems like I have to protect it in my dantian. Ning Fan wiped away the black blood that flowed out from his right eye. Suddenly, he raised his hand and the shield treasure fragment turned into a ray of light and swallowed it. After communicating with the fragment for a long time, Ning Fan had already found the way to use it. The fragment of the god exterminating shield flew into Ning Fan's dantian and hovered around his primordial spirit to protect it. As Ning Fan willed it, the magic power in his body immediately flowed towards the fragment of the god exterminating shield. At this moment, the power of the fragment of the god exterminating shield was completely activated by Ning Fan. At this moment, layers of dark red light appeared on Ning Fan's body. The light became more and more condensed. Eventually, it turned into the shadow of a giant that seemed illusory and wrapped his body within it. The shadow of the giant was only 100 zhang tall. It was wearing a dark red armor that emitted a threatening divine light. Its body was like burning flames. It held a shield in its left hand and a sword in its right hand. The sword was extremely illusory as if it could not be used. However, the shield seemed a little solid. Inside the giant's body, Ning Fan seemed to have the strongest defensive power in the world. At this moment, he had such a feeling. It was as if there was no attack that could penetrate the shadow of the giant and hurt him who was inside the giant's body. Even the attacks of some immortal emperors could not do it. Do you want to test the defensive power of the god exterminating shield of the ancient country? Dao Manshan, who was not concerned about Ning Fan's choice, suddenly spoke with a smile. He did not give Ning Fan the chance to answer. Before Ning Fan could reply, he had already raised his hand and pressed a finger down on Ning Fan. Dao Manshan's finger was indescribably profound. As his finger swept across the sky immediately turned into a starry sky. Within the starry sky, 9 cultivation planets crashed towards Ning Fan. Each of the cultivation planets was an emperor-grade cultivation planet. Once they explode, even an immortal emperor would be injured. The self-destruction of an emperor-grade cultivation planet was enough to slightly injure an immortal emperor who had undergone the 6th tribulation of all eternity. When dozens of emperor stars explode at the same time, perhaps even a peak immortal emperor would have to retreat. The power of Dao Manshan's finger directly manifested 9 emperor-grade cultivation planets. The self-destruction of 9 emperor-grade cultivation planets should be comparable to a full-powered attack of an 8th tribulation immortal emperor. Dao Manshan thought to himself. He could also display a stronger attack, but that would exceed the current defensive power of the god exterminating shield. After all, Ning Fan only had a fragment of the god exterminating shield. The defensive power of the God-exterminating shield was still very limited. Bang! As Dao Manshan uttered the word, the 9 stars exploded at the same time. Ning Fan had seen the explosion of cultivation planets before, but it was his first time witnessing the explosion of an emperor-grade cultivation planet. It was not an exaggeration to say that the force of the explosion was enough to destroy heaven and earth. If it was him in the past, even if he had the strength comparable to an immortal venerate, he would certainly be severely injured by such an explosion or even die. It would be useless even if he hid in the profound Yin world. The explosive force of such a level was enough to penetrate through the medium-sized world and hurt the cultivators inside the world treasure. However, at this moment, Ning Fan activated the power of the fragment of the God-exterminating shield. With the giant's shadow protecting his body, he did not feel any sense of danger even when the 9 emperor stars exploded. The giant raised the shield in his hand. His expression was indifferent and emotionless, as if the explosion of the 9 stars was nothing. As soon as the divine light dispersed, the destructive explosive storm was blocked 10,000 zhang away from the giant. The area within 10,000 zhang was like a vacuum. No attack could penetrate it. Even the explosion of 9 emperor-grade cultivation planets could not break the defense of the giant's shadow, let alone injuring Ning Fan, who was inside the giant's body. This was the terrifying defensive power of the fragment of the God-exterminating shield. It was the God-exterminating shield of the ancient country, a heaven-opening grade magic treasure. Even if Ning Fan only had 1 fragment and his current strength was only comparable to an immortal venerate, he could withstand a full-powered attack from an 8th tribulation immortal emperor without suffering any damage. This fragment is the 6th fragment of the God-exterminating shield of the ancient country. On the ancient heaven-opening ranking, even the natal magic treasures of some immortal sovereigns might not be ranked in the top 100. However, this treasure is ranked 19th. When this treasure was intact, there were many immortal sovereigns who coveted this shield. However, none of them could defeat me and take it away. When I was at my peak, my cultivation base was at the desolate Saint Realm. My strength was much weaker than a 4th step immortal sovereign. However, I was not afraid of those immortal sovereigns because of the heaven-defying defensive power of this shield. Unfortunately, I was tricked by the immortal sovereign Huanggu. This shield was also broken into 6 fragments during that battle. The 6 fragments were scattered all over the world. Among them, the 4th fragment had the highest spiritual power, and it had reincarnated into a human. The 1st and 2nd fragments were taken away by the ancient Huanggu. The 5th fragment was retrieved by the chaotic Kuan sacred sect, but its whereabouts were unknown. As for the 3rd fragment, it was lost in the 6 paths of samsara and couldn't be found. The fragment in my hand is the 6th fragment. Because you could make this fragment recognize you as its master on its own, I am telling you so much. Otherwise, I wouldn't have said much. I am already dead, but I don't want this supreme treasure to be covered in dust. You are fated with this treasure. Since you can make it recognize you as its master on its own, don't let its reputation down. With this treasure protecting you, no one below the 9 tribulation immortal emperor can hurt you. Of course, if you can find the other fragments and fuse them with the 6th fragment, its defensive power will be even stronger. If you can gather all of the fragments, this treasure will become a true treasure that can open the heavens. Even a 4th step immortal emperor will go crazy for it. You are very lucky to have the chi of the 4th fragment and gain the recognition of the 6th fragment. Ning Fan's eyes widened in surprise. His heart was already filled with waves of shock. He did not expect that this God-vanquishing shield of the ancient country was actually a supreme treasure that even a 4th step immortal emperor would covet. On the ancient heaven-opening ranking, this treasure was ranked 19th. Just a single fragment was enough to ignore the attacks of immortal emperors below the 9 tribulations realm. With this shield, Dao Manshan was not afraid of 4th step immortal emperors with his desolate Saint Realm cultivation base. If he chooses this item, he would immediately have a heaven-defying defensive power that would make him invulnerable to attacks below the 9 tribulations realm. Moreover, if he is lucky enough to find the other fragments, he could even make the God-vanquishing shield's power grow stronger, What surprised Ning Fan even more was that after the fragment of the god-vanquishing shield entered his dantian, even the yin-yang locket was afraid of it. Moreover, traces of undying power flowed out from the fragment and continuously fused into Ning Fan's bloodline, changing his devil bloodline, causing his blood to gradually gain the undying characteristic. He was actually developing the undying physique bit by bit. His body was slowly producing the devil blood of the undying devil veins. Since ancient times, the undying Great Emperor was the first person to possess the undying physique while Si Ming was the second. Would Ning Fan be the third? It was definitely not a loss to choose this treasure. Since you have already obtained the sixth fragment, you are the true inheritor of my Dao barbarian lineage. With my order, no one is allowed to attack you in the ancient barbarian tomb. I, Dao Barbarian Mountain, will personally protect you during your 8th and even 9th stages. Let's go. I will accompany you to the 7th level to meet Shizihua. I don't believe that a mere 4th barbarian god dares to disobey the order of me, the first barbarian god. However, before that, you still have to go through the 2nd and 3rd stages of the Dao Barbarian tomb. I don't have the fragment anymore, but I still have other things that I can give you. You can choose from them. Dao Barbarian Mountain flicked his sleeves and the entire world changed. At the next moment, he brought Ning Fan to the 5th level of the ancient barbarian tomb. The 2nd stage of the Dao Barbarian tomb begins. With the protection of the fragment of the god-vanquishing shield, it shouldn't be difficult for you to pass this stage. Dao Barbarian Mountain said confidently. Chapter 939. The 2nd stage of the Barbarian Dao stage begins. With the protection of the god-vanquishing shield, it shouldn't be difficult for you to pass this stage. As Barbarian Daoshan gave his order, all the scenery in the world disappeared as if a pair of invisible hands had wiped away everything in the world. Only endless darkness remained. In the darkness, Ning Fan floated alone in the air. His eyes narrowed slightly. Another divine ability that can change the heavens and earth. The first test tested one's willpower. I wonder what the second test will be. There was endless darkness all around, and the air was somewhat damp. There was also the intermittent sound of water dripping coming from the end of the darkness. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. This place was dead silent, only the sound of the water dripping was exceptionally clear. Even with Ning Fan's 2nd level heavenly being realm eyesight, he could not see through the darkness here. Ning Fan tried to use a few common illumination techniques in the cultivation world, but it could only illuminate a radius of 10 zhang. He still couldn't see anything beyond that. Was this the 2nd stage of the Barbarian Dao test? Barbarians are the ancestors of nature, the great sex of all realms. The barbarian was born in the mountains and seas, attaining the Dao in nature, returning to the mountains and seas after death. The 9 mountains and 8 seas are one world. The reincarnation of heaven and earth is opened in the palm. Sounds of chanting scriptures that seemed to come from the ancient times suddenly resounded. At this moment, Ning Fan's body could no longer stay in the air. His body felt light and fell towards the darkness below. The forbidding force of this place is very strong. Ning Fan's heart shuddered slightly. As his body fell, he sensed several faint killing intents in his surroundings. Without any hesitation, Ning Fan immediately activated the fragment of the divine extermination shield and summoned the shadow of the god extermination giant outside his body. In the next instant, several black shadows the size of small mountains crashed heavily into the god-destroying giant. The resulting shockwaves shook heaven and earth. The surroundings were too dark, and he couldn't see what it was at all. Ning Fan's expression changed. The impact force of those shadows was definitely comparable to the attacks of immortal venerables of the past 10,000 years. They possessed the power to destroy heaven and earth. If it wasn't for him being vigilant and summoning the god-destroying giant in time to protect himself, he would certainly be severely injured by those shadows. The 2nd stage of the Barbarian Dao was indeed filled with danger. He could not afford to be careless. When the dark shadows missed their attack, they roared furiously and continued to attack the god-destroying giant. However, none of their attacks could hurt Ning Fan, who was inside the giant's body. Ning Fan kept falling downwards while those dark shadows were also chasing after him. The deeper he fell, the denser the dark qi in the surroundings became. When the density of the dark qi in the surroundings reached a certain level, those dark shadows no longer dared to pursue Ning Fan. It was as if they were afraid of something and did not dare to get close to him. The surroundings gradually became quiet. Ning Fan was still falling. He did not know how long he had been falling. Finally, he landed on the ground and found a foothold. After he successfully landed, the forbidden space force disappeared, and the sound of water dripping became even clearer. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. The ground beneath his feet was as cold and hard as a rock. Beside his ears, the sound of dripping water could be heard. Ning Fan used the illumination technique again, but he found that it was only enough to illuminate a radius of 10 meters. The darkness aura here was even stronger, not allowing any light to exist. He roughly sensed that there was only his aura in this dark land. There were no other living beings. The absence of other creatures did not mean that there was no danger. Ning Fan did not let his guard down. Instead, he waited at the same spot for a long time. Only when the magic power in his body was faintly insufficient to support the consumption of the God-exterminating shield did he try to keep the giant God-exterminating shadow. After keeping the God-exterminating shadow, Ning Fan still did not receive any attacks. This place seemed to be very safe. There were no aggressive dark shadows around. The second stage of the Barbarian Dao stage was very different from what he had imagined. Ning Fan had no idea how he should pass the stage. 17 days. If you can stay here for 17 days, you will pass. If you can walk out of this place, you will also pass. You have the protection of the God-exterminating shield. Even if you can't walk out of this place, it's still very easy for you to stay here for 17 days. However, if it's possible, I still hope to see the scene of you walking out of this place. The voice of the Barbarian Dao Mountain resounded. So this is the way to pass the second stage. Ning Fan pondered for a while. After a while, he seemed to have made up his mind and began to explore the dark land. After he landed, this place was no longer forbidden from flying. He could use the golden light to fly and explore this dark land. This land seemed to be extremely vast. Even with Ning Fan's speed, he had yet to reach the end of the land after spending a day and a night. Moreover, this place gave Ning Fan an extremely strange feeling. It was as if he would not reach the end even if he walked for 100 years or even 1,000 years. This feeling was really strange. On the first day, there was no danger in this place. Unknowingly, those ravines began to give Ning Fan a feeling of fear and trepidation. The sixth day seems to be this young man's limit. If he doesn't have the protection of the God-destroying shield, he can at most last 6 days in the second stage. He won't be able to pass it. With the God-destroying shield, he can use its power to suppress this place. It won't be difficult for him to endure for 17 days. In the past, when I tried to challenge the second stage with my cultivation base at the Quasi-Saint realm, I could only endure for 14 days. I couldn't make it to the end. If it wasn't for the third barbarian god who saved me, this stage would certainly be my burial ground. Shizihua peaked at the second stage with complicated feelings. Ning Fan was the Tai Tsung tribulation spirit. Originally, she wished that Ning Fan would die. However, Ning Fan inherited the fragment of the God-destroying shield and became the inheritor of the Dao barbarian lineage. Moreover, he was acknowledged by the Dao barbarian mountain. The God-destroying shield was not only a heaven-opening treasure with immense power but also the symbol of the inheritor of the Dao barbarian lineage. The person who possesses this item has the right to kill and punish any barbarian. Even the barbarian god would be punished by the God-destroying shield if he or she makes a mistake. The person who possesses this item can once again suppress the luck of the barbarian race. This was also the most crucial point as it was related to the rise and fall of the barbarian race. The Dao barbarian mountain had yet to tell Ning Fan about these things. Instead, he was waiting for Ning Fan to discover the meaning of the God-destroying shield on his own. The samsara power in this place will become stronger as time passes. The 6th day is already the limit for me to stay here. If the samsara power gets stronger in a few more days, I'm afraid I will die here. Ning Fan sighed softly. With his current cultivation base, it was really a little difficult for him to pass the second stage. Fortunately, he had the protection of the God-destroying shield. The more dangerous the situation was, the more he could feel how strong the shield was. The fragment of the God-destroying shield was extremely intelligent. As soon as it sensed that Ning Fan could not withstand the samsara power in this place, it actually released a force on its own and easily blocked the samsara power in this place 10 zhang away from him. Even without summoning the God-destroying giant, the shield was still so powerful. It really surprised Ning Fan. With this treasure, it was really not difficult for him to endure for 17 days in this place. As for him, he had spent 6 days but he still could not find the end of this dark land. He could not get out of this place. I'm afraid that I won't be able to get out of this place even if I search for 17 days. Ning Fan thought to himself. Anyway, with the protection of the God-destroying shield, it is not difficult for me to stay here for 17 days. It seems like there is no need for me to continue searching this dark land. As soon as this thought appeared in Ning Fan's mind, a voice resounded in his mind like a plea. My soul is in my hand. Find him. Find my soul. The sixth fragment. I have a soul. After I die, my soul will return to the mountains and seas. Find my soul. I am the real God-destroying shield. My soul is in my hand, the edge of my palm. That voice was actually produced by the God-destroying shield. It was not a voice that could be heard by the ears. Instead, it was a voice that came from the soul. Before Ning Fan comprehended the mountain and sea incantation, he could not hear such a soul voice. Now, however, he could hear it. With his Tao comprehension, he could communicate with the mountains, the seas and all the inanimate objects in this world as long as the other party is willing to. Be it the mountains or the seas, as long as there is a soul, he could hear the other party's voice. This was the great Tao of nature of the barbarians. Of course, not every barbarian cultivator could achieve this. Those who could cultivate the mountain and sea incantation were the young barbarian cultivators. Only the young minister of barbarian tribes could communicate with nature, and there were only a few among the young minister of barbarians. Ning Fan, however, was able to do it. He could be considered as a heavenly genius. The soul voice of the God-destroying shield was begging Ning Fan to find his lost soul. It kept telling Ning Fan, the soul is in my hand, the edge of my palm, the soul is in my hand, the edge of my palm. What does it mean? Ning Fan frowned slightly. He did not mind helping the God-destroying shield to find his lost soul. However, he could not understand what the God-destroying shield was saying. The soul is here. This time, the God-destroying shield changed the way it said it. Ning Fan finally understood what it meant. The soul of the God-destroying shield was lost in this dark place. Since I have to stay here for 17 days, I might as well find the soul of the God-destroying shield here. However, I do not know where it is. The soul is in my hand, the edge of my palm. The soul is in my hand, the edge of my palm. The God-destroying shield did not have any spiritual intelligence. It could only instinctively send out the soul voice to remind Ning Fan. Ning Fan suddenly felt helpless. Communicating with the God-destroying shield was like talking to a babbling infant. It was extremely strenuous. Even though barbarians could communicate with the mountains and seas were not humans after all. Their intelligence was not on the same level. Ning Fan shook his head. It doesn't matter if I don't understand it. I'll just casually look for it in this place first. Ning Fan continued to search in this place. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days had passed. He had already flown in this dark place for 9 days. On the 9th day, Ning Fan still could not find the soul of the God-destroying shield. He also could not find the end of this dark place. Is this dark place really so vast? For the first time, doubt appeared in Ning Fan's eyes. He had continued flying for 9 days and 9 nights. However, he had a strange feeling. It was as if he had been going in circles on the same spot for the past 3 days. He did not move too far away at all. In the darkness, he saw a magic power imprint that was shining brightly. That made him even more convinced of his guess. While moving forward in this dark place, Ning Fan would leave some magic power imprints along the way from time to time. He kept moving forward in a straight line. However, after flying for 9 days, he saw the magic power imprint that he left on the first day ahead of him. Could it be that I am really going in circles in this dark place? Perhaps this place is not really vast. Instead, there is some kind of power that prevents people from walking out of this place. That's why people are unable to walk out of this place. After pondering for a while, Ning Fan changed his direction and flew in another direction. On the 11th day, he once again encountered the imprint that he left in the past. He changed his direction again. On the 13th day, he returned to the same spot. Is this young man unable to walk out of this place? Dao Man Shan sighed softly. If he cannot walk out of this place, he would not be able to find the soul of the God-destroying shield. If he cannot find the soul of the God-destroying shield, he will not be able to restore the might of the shield to its peak even if he collects all of its fragments. If this young man cannot find the soul of the shield, I will have to help him personally. Dao Man Shan thought to himself. This is samsara. No matter where I go, I will always return to the starting point. Because it is impossible to change. This is samsara. Shi Zihua let out a faint sigh. It was already the 13th day. It seemed like Ning Fan could not walk out of this place with his own strength. Without the God-destroying shield, he should not be able to pass the second stage with his own strength. With his current cultivation base, he could only stay in this place for 6 days. It was not enough for him to pass the second stage. Besides, he could not find a way to leave this place either. To this young man, the second stage seems to be a little too early. From the 13th day onwards, Ning Fan no longer blindly moved forward in this dark place. Instead, he stopped. Moving forward aimlessly would only make him go around in circles. There was no meaning to it. The soul is in my hand, the edge of my palm. The soul is in my hand, the edge of my palm. The God-destroying shield was still repeating those 2 sentences foolishly. It made Ning Fan feel helpless. He could not understand those 2 sentences at all. I will pass the second stage in another 4 days. It seems like I will also lose the chance to find the soul of the God-destroying shield. The reason why I got lost is because of the darkness in this place. What will happen if I sweep away the darkness in this place? The reason why this place is dark seems to be intentional. It doesn't want me to see some things in this place clearly. With my current cultivation base, it is not enough to sweep away the darkness in this place. However, if I pay some price, I should be able to do it in a short period of time. Ning Fan's eyes flashed with determination. Finding the soul of the shield seemed to be a great opportunity. In order to obtain this opportunity, he did not mind paying some price. He suddenly hammered his chest with his fists. Enduring the intense pain, he coughed out 12 mouthfuls of blood essence in a row. Instantly, his chi became much weaker. With the power of the 12 mouthfuls of blood essence, Ning Fan pointed his finger at the sky. The black and red flames of the evil beast immediately covered the entire heaven and earth. They burned fiercely and the light of the flames soared to the sky. There were even sounds of wind and thunder that pierced the ears. The flames of the evil beast were originally not enough to illuminate the darkness in this place. Ning Fan had tried this several times before. However, after absorbing the power of the blood essence, he was able to achieve this. The soaring flames gradually tore apart the darkness. With the help of the flames, Ning Fan finally saw the true appearance of this dark land. His heart was filled with shock. The place where he was standing was not a piece of land at all. It was obviously an incomparably huge palm which was as vast as the entire continent. The wrist of the gigantic palm seemed to have been cut off by some sharp weapon. Blood was still flowing out of the wound. After countless years, the blood had lost all of its spiritual nature. However, it was still flowing. The dripping sound that Ning Fan heard just now was the sound of blood dripping from the broken palm. The crisscrossing ravines were the palm lines on the broken palm. The samsara power that lingered in this place was flowing out from the palm lines. Ning Fan's speed was very fast. Even though the broken palm was extremely vast, theoretically he would only need a few breaths to fly out of the range of the broken palm. However, no matter how far he flew, he would never be able to see the edge of the broken palm. The broken palm seemed to keep growing bigger as he flew. He could neither fly nor escape from it. It was as if he was just a fly and the palm that trapped him was the entire world. Whose broken palm is this? With just a broken palm, it was enough to imprison Ning Fan, whose cultivation base was close to the immortal Venerate realm. This kind of strength was truly terrifying. Ning Fan carefully sensed it. Finally, he sensed a trace of Dao Man Shan's qi from the broken palm. Perhaps, this broken palm is Dao Man Shan's palm. Then, isn't the blood flowing in this place the blood of a saint? Unfortunately, the blood seemed to have lost all of its spiritual nature. It was useless now. The soul is in the palm. At the edge of the palm, the God-exterminating shield's silly voice rang again. This time, Ning Fan understood what it meant. The soul of the God-exterminating shield must be at the edge of this broken palm. As long as I can get out of this palm, I will certainly be able to find the soul of the God-exterminating shield. However, he was trapped in the palm. How was he going to break free? How was he going to get out of this place? The light of the fire of the adversity beast was gradually swallowed by the darkness, and the world once again fell into darkness. In the darkness, Ning Fan closed his eyes for the first time. Since his eyes were useless, why should he use them? There was no way to get out of this place as it was a saint's trap. If one wanted to get out, they would have to use all their strength, and only then would there be a slim chance of success. On the 14th day, Ning Fan stood still like a statue. On the 15th day, Ning Fan still did not move. On the 16th day, he still did nothing. He was secretly calculating something in his heart. He activated the secret of the word, force, to the extreme, causing the forces of heaven and earth to move according to him. It has already been 16 days. Has this young man still not given up yet? Shi Zihua shook her head gently. She no longer held any hope for Ning Fan to walk out of this place alive. On the 17th day, Ning Fan finally opened his eyes. His expression was resolute as if he had made up his mind. Divide! As soon as Ning Fan uttered a word, a copy of himself who looked exactly the same as him walked out of his body. That Ning Fan's entire body was shrouded in black qi, which was filled with the power of an ancient devil. It had 6 wings on its back and a devil horn on its head. Its body was covered in scales. It was actually Ning Fan's clone that was formed from the devil Dao that he had cultivated throughout his life. Ning Fan rarely used cloning abilities. However, it did not mean that he did not know how to do it. On the contrary, when he was at the harmonious spirit realm, he was already able to create clones. He had once created 2 clones, by Fan and Mo Ning. The reason why he created an ancient devil clone at this moment was naturally to deal with the current situation. As soon as the ancient devil clone appeared, it did not say anything. It immediately turned into a ray of devil light and dashed towards the east, trying to get out of the range of the broken palm. Divide again. Ning Fan used another ability and created an ancient god clone from his body. The ancient god clone was enshrouded in the will of rain and emitted a threatening divine light. As soon as it appeared, it immediately flew towards the west. Ancient demon clone appear. Another Ning Fan who wore black robes and had runes on his face walked out of his body. There was a hint of purple on his black robes. It was none other than Ning Fan's ancient demon clone. As soon as the ancient demon clone appeared, it directly turned into a Fu-Li demon butterfly and flew towards the north. The continuous creation of the ancient devil, ancient god and ancient demon clones was extremely taxing on Ning Fan. However, it was not the end yet. Ning Fan took a deep breath. Then he created another clone which was shrouded in red light from his body. This clone was his tribulation spirit clone. It was also the strongest clone among his 4 great clones. As soon as the tribulation spirit clone appeared, it immediately flew towards the south. There were clones flying in 4 different directions. After Ning Fan's true body created the 4 great clones, he seemed to have lost all of his cultivation base. He stood on the same spot like a mortal. However, he opened his eyes which shone with green light as if he was plotting something. Does this young man think that he can escape from my broken palm just by creating 4 clones? Dao Manshan shook his head in disappointment. If Ning Fan only has this little bit of ability, he would not be able to get out of this place. At first, he thought that Ning Fan had found a way to get out of this place after planning for a few days. Unexpectedly, after waiting for this young man for a few days, all he got was a clone technique. The 4 clones flew in different directions, but none of them could get out of the range of the broken palm. This broken palm was simply boundless, split. Ning Fan uttered another word. His 4 great clones actually split into 2 and then from 2 into 4. In an instant, there were millions of clones flying in countless directions. To low-level cultivators, transforming into 1 million clones was considered a peerless ability. However, it was not difficult for him to use it after his cultivation base had reached this level. Transforming into 1 million clones? With just 1 million clones, I won't be able to get out of this place. Even if I transform into 10 billion clones, the result will still be the same. Dao Manshan shook his head and said. However, at the next moment, Dao Manshan's eyes widened in shock. At this moment, Ning Fan's 1 million clones suddenly acted crazily. All of them raised their fingers and pressed down on the broken palm in all directions. Each of Ning Fan's clones was displaying the heaven sealing technique. The 1 million Ning Fan's clones attacked at the same time. Clearly, they wanted to use the heaven sealing technique to stop Dao Manshan's broken palm. It's actually the chaotic Kuan sacred sex reincarnation sealing technique. It's not the real reincarnation sealing technique. This technique just looks like it. It doesn't have the power to seal the reincarnation sealing technique. Dao Manshan's eyes narrowed. He realized that he had underestimated Ning Fan from the beginning until the end. Even though this technique was not the reincarnation sealing technique of the chaotic Kuan sacred sect, it was still very extraordinary. If Ning Fan's 1 million clones were to display this technique, it would probably be able to stop the broken palm for a moment. The 1 million clones that Ning Fan had created each took a direction and secretly coordinated with each other. When the heaven sealing technique was linked together, it was like a formation that greatly increased the power of the technique. If it wasn't for that, Ning Fan certainly would not be able to stop the palm of a saint with his current cultivation base, even if it was just a broken palm that had existed for countless years and had lost all of its spiritual nature. This young man's understanding of formations must also be extremely profound. Ordinary immortal venerables from the ancient times would definitely not be able to stop the broken palm, not even for a moment. Only this young man. Seal! As Ning Fan shouted, he activated the 1 million heaven sealing technique to its maximum. At this moment, Ning Fan forcefully performed the technique and stopped the broken palm for a moment. However, he also suffered a severe backlash. Each of his clones could not withstand the backlash and collapsed one after another. Their cultivation bases gradually returned to Ning Fan's body. However, those injuries were also brought back to Ning Fan's body, making him feel like his body was on the verge of collapsing. Unfortunately, the God-vanquishing shield had its own undying power. As soon as it noticed that Ning Fan was injured, it automatically protected his soul and physical body from being destroyed. If it wasn't for that, Ning Fan's action of forcefully stopping the broken palm of a saint would at least destroy half of his physical body. Ning Fan's 1 million clones collapsed and his cultivation base returned to him. He did not even have the time to wipe the blood from his mouth. Instead, he turned into a ray of golden light and flew towards a certain direction. At the moment before the broken palm regained its mobility, Ning Fan flew out of the prison of the broken palm. Then, he saw a trace of soul at the edge of the broken palm. It was the indistinct soul of the shield. It was illusory but extremely bright, like the brightest star in the sky. Even the darkness of this place could not devour its light. This was the soul of the God-vanquishing shield. Ning Fan had a premonition that once he obtains this soul, the God-vanquishing shield would undergo some kind of qualitative change. This young man actually managed to escape from the broken palm of the Dao barbarian with his cultivation base, which is not even at the immortal venerable realm. Shi Zihua was so shocked that she could not close her mouth. Even though she had the cultivation base of a quasi-saint, She could not escape from the prison of the Tao barbarian's broken palm. However, Ning Fan did it. He stopped the broken palm for a moment even though he was severely injured. This young man's abilities are unimaginable. His ruthlessness and decisiveness are even more unexpected. What a terrifying junior. Chapter 940. The mountain had a soul. If the soul scattered, it would become a barren mountain, not even a blade of grass would grow. The sea had a soul. If the soul was scattered, it would become a dead sea. The fish and dragons would no longer exist. The god-exterminating shield also had a soul. However, that soul was dispersed when the shield was broken. The soul was in his hand, at the edge of his palm. At this moment, the soul of the shield was right in front of him. Soul, return. The fragment of the god-exterminating shield in Ning Fan's body let out a soul voice of longing. Suddenly, it turned into a ray of light and flew out of Ning Fan's body, heading towards the soul of the shield. It was as if they were finally reunited after millions of years of separation. At the edge of the broken palm, in the boundless darkness, the two slowly fused together, becoming one again. The fusion process was calm and quiet, but Ning Fan could clearly feel that the sixth fragment of the shield soul was different from before. Even though the sixth fragment possessed unparalleled power, it gave off a feeling of lifelessness. But at this moment, the god-vanquishing shield had a soul. The divine radiance was no longer dim, and it gained some spirituality. After a long time, the soul fusion was complete. The sixth fragment no longer emitted any soul voice. Instead, it slowly flew back to Ning Fan's side and hovered around his body like a cheerful child. Although it didn't speak, Ning Fan could sense its gratitude from its behavior. The shield also had emotions. It was grateful to Ning Fan for helping it find its soul, allowing it to be complete bit by bit. Ning Fan smiled faintly. He opened his mouth and swallowed the sixth fragment back into his body, keeping it in his dantian. He liked creatures that knew gratitude, even if they were just a shield. Furthermore, he had a vague feeling that the sixth fragment of the shield soul had undergone some sort of qualitative change and gained some sort of ability, although he didn't know what it was exactly. Not bad, you did not disappoint this old man's expectations. You have indeed walked out of the broken palm seal. You very good. As Dao Manshan's voice resounded, the surrounding darkness disappeared. The scenery of the fifth level of the ancient barbaric tomb gradually appeared before Ning Fan's eyes. At the same time, the stairway to the sixth level appeared, as well as countless silver chests floating in the air. There weren't many silver chests, only 42 of them. They were all open, and the contents inside could be clearly seen. In the box, it was not the relics of the saints that had appeared on the fourth floor. Instead, it was filled with wooden tablets similar to life tablets. However, they were slightly different from life tablets. Among the 42 wooden tablets, 29 of them had been broken into halves. Only 13 of them were still intact. Are these wooden tokens the reward for clearing the second stage of the Barbarian Tao test? Logically speaking, the rewards for the second stage of the Barbarian Tao test should be more valuable than the rewards for the first stage. Could these wooden tablets be more valuable than the heaven-opening spirit Ganoderma? Come here, I will introduce you to these Barbarian Soul tokens. When Ning Fan heard what Dao Manshan said, he followed Dao Manshan to the altar. He suppressed the doubts in his heart and listened to Dao Manshan's introduction. It would have been better if he hadn't heard it, but after hearing it he couldn't help but be shocked. The Dao Berserker Soul Order was a unique plate, and only the gods of Berserkers knew how to create it. Each soul order had the life soul of a powerful cultivator sealed in it, and there were special runes planted on it. As long as he had the corresponding soul order, he could easily control that person's life or death, and make that person submit to him as a slave. In short, the reward for clearing the second stage of the Barbarian Tao test was not an inanimate object but a living slave. When I was alive, I had once conquered the heavens and subdued 42 saints as my servants, planting soul tokens in them. It has been many years since my death. Among those saints, 29 of them have already died. There are still 13 of them alive in the ancient barbarian world, waiting for the true inheritors of the barbarian Tao test to return. Their soul tokens are here. Since you've passed the second stage of the barbarian Tao test, I will give you a saint servant. Ning Fan could not help but feel shocked. Passing the second stage of the barbarian Tao test would actually allow him to obtain a saint servant. Making a dignified third-step saint as his servant was really too generous. There was not a single saint in the 4 heavens and 9 worlds. Be it ancient chaos or undying, none of them were able to step into the saint realm. As for Ning Fan, he had the chance to obtain a saint servant today. How could he not be shocked? It's too early for you to be happy. If I'm not mistaken, you shouldn't be a cultivator from the mortal world or the defying earth realm, let alone a cultivator from the ancient sacred sect. Am I right? Dao Manshan's eyes turned slightly serious as if he could easily see through all of Ning Fan's secrets. Mortal world, defying earth realm, ancient sacred sect. Ning Fan's eyes were filled with a hint of confusion. He simply knew nothing about these terms. You don't know? Sure enough, I'm not mistaken. You're a cultivator from the illusory dream world. However, I don't know which immortal sovereign dreamt of you and which illusory dream world are you in. Dao Manshan sighed softly. In the era where he lived, immortal sovereign Zido had yet to attain the Tao. Thus, he was not familiar with the chi of immortal sovereign Zido's dream world and could not see through where Ning Fan was. What is the illusory dream world? Judging from Senior's tone, it seems like there are many places in the illusory dream world and not just one place? Ning Fan's eyes flashed. He had heard the name of the illusory dream world from many old monsters. Those people often called the world he was in as the illusory dream world. Ning Fan had no idea what the illusory dream world was. However, it seemed like he could get an answer from Dao Manshan today. You're a cultivator from the illusory dream world. It's not strange that you don't know what the illusory dream world is. There are many worlds in this universe. Among them, only 3 great worlds are real. The first is the mortal world. It's the place where the grand firmament tribulation's spirit reincarnates. The second is the defying earth realm. It's the place where the cultivators who defy the mortal world go to reincarnate. The third is the myriad heavens where the ancient sacred sect is located. Other than these 3 worlds, all the other worlds are fake. They are all worlds that are formed in the dreams of 4th-step cultivators. The illusory dream world isn't a real world. It's fine if the cultivators who live in it are from the outside world. However, if they are the local cultivators, they are not real people. They are just illusions. They are the phantoms in the dreams of 4th-step cultivators. An immortal sovereign can create countless illusory dream worlds in his or her lifetime. Other than the 3 great true worlds, there are countless illusory dream worlds. Illusory people will never be able to cultivate to the grand perfection realm. They will also never be able to break through to the 3rd step. Of course, there are also exceptions. As he spoke until here, Dao Manshan seemed to have thought of something in the past. His expression was filled with disappointment. As for Ning Fan, his heart was filled with waves of shock. Today, he had finally come into contact with the greatest secret of the 4 heavens and 9 heavens. The reason why the 4 heavens and 9 worlds was called the illusory dream world was because it was a world that was created by a 4th-step cultivator in a dream. All of the local living beings in it were illusions. They were all phantoms in the dreams of 4th-step immortal sovereigns. They did not really exist. They are actually phantoms. All of us cultivators in the 4 heavens and 9 worlds are actually phantoms in someone else's dream. Is this real? How is this possible? This kind of ancient secret is really unbelievable. Ning Fan had never thought that he would be an illusion in the dream of some supreme 4th-step cultivator, the path that he had walked, the Tao that he had cultivated, and the people that he loved. Are all of them fake? Everything is just a dream. Ever since he stepped onto the path of Tao cultivation, his Tao heart rarely wavered. However, at this moment, his Tao heart trembled slightly. Any cultivator would be shocked when they suddenly heard that they were just an illusory existence. Ning Fan was not an exception either. Soon, however, Ning Fan steadied his Dao heart and regained his composure. He did not doubt the authenticity of Dao Menshan's words, but he would not believe it completely either. Moreover, so what if he is really an illusion in the illusory dream world? So what if the entire world is just a dream of a fourth-step cultivator? Whether it is real or fake, he had been cultivating for many years. What he cultivated was the word truth. However, he could not see through the two words truth and illusion anymore. The more he saw it, the more he could not understand it and the more he felt lost. In this world, what exactly is real and what is fake? Is the dream fake? Or perhaps, the dreamer is the fake one? Who is the real one? Who is the real one? It's hard to say, who is whose reflection is on the water. It's hard to say, between life and death, which side is the real one living. It's hard to say, what is real and what is fake. It's hard to say. Ning Fan only knew that the feelings that he had experienced were real. The kindness that he had received was real. The warmth that he had felt before was real. If he felt that it was real, then it was real. Truth and illusion could be decided in a single thought. He was a cultivator and a person who had comprehended the truth. His heart would not be shaken forever just because of the words of others. Senior, are you saying that I came from the illusory dream world of a fourth-step immortal sovereign? That place is just a dream? And I don't really exist. Ning Fan took a deep breath and his tone returned to its original calmness. If all of this is real, then the fourth-step cultivator who created the 4 heavens and 9 worlds in his dream is most likely immortal sovereign Zido. If all of this is real, the reason why there is no saint in the 4 heavens is probably because all living beings are illusions. How can an illusory person cultivate to the great perfection realm? However, Dao Menshan said that there are exceptions. Will I never be able to cultivate to the great perfection realm in my life? Or perhaps, I will also be one of those exceptions. Ning Fan shook his head and suppressed this unrealistic thought. To him, becoming a saint was still very far away. The current him did not need to worry about these problems at all. Dao Menshan's eyes narrowed slightly. He looked at Ning Fan meaningfully and said, "Your temperament isn't bad. Many cultivators of the illusory dream realm will have their Dao heart waver when they suddenly hear that they are an illusory existence. Some of them even go mad and give up on themselves. As for you, you don't seem to care about whether your body is real or fake. Actually, whether it's real or fake, is it really important to us cultivators? Hee. You don't have to belittle yourself. You come from the illusory dream realm. I won't be wrong about this. It's because you don't have the breath of the true world in your soul. You are a human created by the immortal sovereign in his dream. However, who says that a person created in a dream is not a human? Must a human be created by the intercourse of yin and yang? For us cultivators, as long as our cultivation base is high enough, we can give life even if we pick up a piece of soil. If we say it's a human, then it's a human. Whether it's real or fake isn't important. What's important is how you view it. Let's stop talking about the illusory dream realm. I don't care which illusory dream realm you come from. It's just that there's a problem that gives me a headache. My original intention of giving you the servant of a saint is to protect you. Unfortunately, all my servants are in the ancient barbarian world, which is located in the cold mountain region of the mortal world. As for the place where you are, it seems to be blocked by some kind of extremely powerful force which prevents it from connecting to the true world. If you stay in the illusory dream realm, you won't be able to use the soul order and you won't be able to summon the saint servant that I gave you unless you can walk out of this illusory dream realm and come to the true world. Dao Menshan looked at the countless boxes of silver pitifully. There were 13 barbarian soul orders that he left behind. Among these 13 soul orders, 9 of them were the primordial saint soul orders and 3 of them were the nirvana saint soul orders. The last one was the soul order of a half-step desolate saint realm expert. If Ning Fan could leave the illusory dream realm and enter the true world, he could easily summon a saint servant with the soul order that he gave him. Unfortunately, the illusory dream world that Ning Fan was in had a very strong barrier. He did not know which immortal sovereign had created the illusory dream world. Without the permission of the celestial emperor, Even some fourth-step cultivators would not be able to force their way into this realm. Naturally, his saint servants would not be able to enter this realm. After his death, such a powerful immortal emperor actually appeared in the later generations. It's truly terrifying. He wanted to give Ning Fan a saint realm servant. Unfortunately, these soul medallions seem to be useless unless Ning Fan could walk out of that illusory world. Forget it, I will introduce these soul order tokens to this child first. This soul order token seals the life soul of the Borer Zerg race's primordial saint, Saint Tai Bai. This soul order seals the life soul of the Nirvana saint of the Cold Sect, Sect Master Feng Tian. This soul command. The origins of the soul orders were told by Dao Banshan. Ning Fan's expression changed from the initial shock to a bitter smile. The reward of the second stage of the Barbarian Dao was definitely generous. Was a saint-level servant not considered generous? If he could take one of them with him, he would be the supreme being in the 4 heavens and 9 worlds. The 10 great secret clans would have to stand aside. Unfortunately, he was in the 4 heavens and 9 worlds and could not walk out of this realm. Even if he chooses one of these soul orders, he would not be able to summon those saints to be his servants. These soul orders were not practical at all unless Ning Fan could walk out of the 4 heavens and 9 worlds and arrive at the 3 great true worlds where the ancient barbarian world was located. If he could, Ning Fan would rather use these saint soul orders to exchange for the 8th tribulation puppet in the first stage. Even if its durability was not enough, he could still use it immediately. The last soul order token seals the life soul of a half-step desolate saint. His name is Lan Daofeng. He is the sect master of the 4 Saints sect. Ning Fan listened to Dao Banshan's introduction expressionlessly. The soul order token of a half-step desolate saint sounded very powerful. Unfortunately, it was useless if he could not walk out of the illusory world. Can I use the reward of the second stage to exchange for the items of the first stage? Ning Fan asked with a bitter smile. I'm not the real Dao Banshan. I'm just the shadow of the mountains and seas that Dao Banshan left behind after his death. Even though I've inherited part of his memories and emotions, I can't change the rules that he set before his death. You can only get one reward for each stage. I can't give you the other items, nor can I change the fixed rewards. Dao Banshan shook his head and said, Fine. Since that's the case, I'll choose this half-step desolate saint's soul order. I didn't expect that I would have a half-step desolate saint realm saint as my servant before attaining the 3rd step. I should be satisfied. In the end, Ning Fan chose Lan Daofeng's soul order and kept it casually. The soul order token was not a reward that satisfied him. Fortunately, he had found the soul of the god exterminating shield in the 2nd stage. Thus, he did not gain anything. Dao Banshan looked at Ning Fan with a strange expression. His thoughts seemed to be unable to keep up with the young man in front of him. 3rd step saints were transcendent beings. They would rarely rely on others. Even immortal sovereign Zido only had 400 saints as his subordinates. Moreover, these 400 saints had great freedom. They could listen to orders or not. If there was nothing important, they would not be seen at all. Dao Banshan's cultivation base was at the peak desolate saint realm when he was alive. He could even fight against a 4th step saint realm expert with the god exterminating shield. However, even he had only subdued 42 saint realm servants in his entire life. Obtaining a half-step desolate saint realm servant for no reason was enough to make any old monster in the true world below the 4th step green with envy. However, Ning Fan still wanted to use the soul order token to exchange for a mere 8th tribulation immortal emperor puppet. If Lan Daofeng knew that he was not even comparable to an 8th tribulation immortal emperor puppet in Ning Fan's eyes, he would probably vomit blood out of anger. The 2nd stage has ended. It's time to go to the 3rd stage. It won't waste too much time. To you, the 3rd stage is the easiest one. Of course, there's a precondition for all of this, and that is to find the shield soul. In the 2nd stage, you chose to walk out of the broken palm and find the shield soul. This decision is very wise. The 3rd stage is called the Divine Ascension stage, Dao Banshan said meaningfully, and brought Ning Fan to the 6th level of the ancient barbaric tomb. As Dao Barbanshan pointed with his finger, the shadow of an ancient tall platform appeared between heaven and earth. It gradually became tangible. The tall platform meandered all the way up. On both sides of the path, ancient barbaric statues that were as large as small mountains were kneeling. At the end of the tall platform was a majestic altar. There was also an ancient tablet standing at the top of the altar. There were 9 names on the ancient tablet. All of them were written in the ancient barbaric script. Ning Fan had stayed in the ancient barbaric region for many years after all. Even though he was not proficient in the ancient barbaric script, he still knew some of it. The first name among the 9 names was obviously Dao Barbanshan. The 4th name was Shi Zihua. The 7th name was Ta Gu. The 9th name was Nmo. The 10th name was still empty. This is the divine ascension stage of my Dao barbarian tribe. Those who ascend to the divine ascension stage will become the barbarian god of my Dao barbarian tribe. You can carve your name on the Dao barbarian tablet. Those who ascend to the divine ascension stage would become the barbarian god. Becoming the barbarian god was the reward for completing the 3rd stage of the Dao barbarian test. Of course, not every barbarian god had gone through the 3 stages of the Dao barbarian test. The divine ascension stage would not only appear in the 3rd stage. Most of the other barbarian gods would need to go through hundreds and thousands of trials before they could ascend to the divine seat. Ning Fan was the only one who was different. He was the one who went all the way to the 3rd stage of the Dao barbarian test. He had the chance to reach the heavens in a single bound and become the 10th barbarian god in the history of the ancient barbarian world. After ascending to the divine ascension stage, Ning Fan would be known as the supreme existence in the history of the barbarian race. If Ning Fan becomes the barbarian god, he would have the authority to command all the barbarian cultivators in the ancient barbarian world. Among those barbarian cultivators, there were even many saints. Ning Fan was not a barbarian cultivator who was born in the ancient barbarian world. Thus, he did not know how honorable the barbarian god was. However, he could imagine some of it. However, he was not willing to become the barbarian god of the barbarian race without knowing why. The identity of the barbarian god not only meant great authority but also the responsibility to revitalize the barbarian race. At the same time, it also involved a great amount of karma. The barbarian race seemed to have a deep karma with the Jieling clan. The higher Ning Fan's cultivation base was, the more he felt that karma was terrifying. He had received a little reward from Nmo, but he was already tainted with karma and was nearly killed by the blessing technique. If he becomes the barbarian god of the barbarian race, he did not know what kind of karma he would be tainted with and what kind of trouble he would attract. Ning Fan did not have the leisure to revitalize the barbarian race. He also did not want to be an irresponsible barbarian god without knowing why. Moreover, he did not want to get himself into a huge pile of karma for no reason. For a long time, Ning Fan stared at the divine ascension stage in front of him and did not take a step forward. In the end, he sighed softly and asked Dao Man Shan, "If I give up on the 3rd stage, what will happen?" In other words, he was unwilling to become the barbarian god. Dao Man Shan looked at Ning Fan with great surprise as if he did not expect Ning Fan to ask such a question. In the few memories he had, it seemed like every barbarian cultivator was extremely eager to become the barbarian god and possess supreme power. With the position of the barbarian god, one could use the resources of the entire barbarian race for cultivation. He could also command all the barbarian cultivators to go on expeditions. Besides, he could also borrow the luck of the entire barbarian race to increase his chances of breaking through to the 3rd step. No matter if it was someone who was passionate about power or someone who was passionate about cultivation, none of them would reject the position of the barbarian god. However, Ning Fan rejected it. After a brief moment of surprise, Dao Man Shan understood the reason why Ning Fan rejected the position of the barbarian god. His impression of Ning Fan became better. Fight. Let the barbarian god wield his sword and fight against the heavens. Roars that seemed to come from ancient times resounded across heaven and earth. It was as if thousands of troops and horses were charging towards them. As soon as the strange phenomenon and the roars appeared, they began to project and spread to the outside world. Outside the ancient barbarian tomb was the space of the bronze pagoda. Inside the space of the bronze pagoda, the shadow of the barbaric statue that held the shield and pointed the sword at the heavens appeared along with countless figures that knelt down and begged for mercy. Miao Yen was so shocked by the strange phenomenon that she walked out of her cave. However, she did not understand what it meant. Even though she did not understand it, it did not mean that the eyeball monster did not understand it. It had been 17 days since the last time he communicated with Ning Fan using his spirit sense. The eyeball monster was originally very worried about Ning Fan's safety. He was worried that Ning Fan would not be able to get through the eighth suffering. However, when he saw the strange phenomenon in the sky, his face turned pale with fright. All of his worries were replaced by astonishment at this moment. If he was not mistaken, this strange phenomenon was the shadow of the barbarian god fighting against the heavens. Could it be that the 10th barbarian god of the barbarian race is going to be born after Enemo? Fight, fight, fight. Let the barbarian god wield his sword and fight against the heavens. This strange phenomenon is definitely related to that brat Ning Fan. Could it be that the 10th barbarian god who is about to be born is actually that brat? The strange phenomenon continued to project to the outside world. In the space outside the copper pagoda, the strange phenomenon of the god of barbarians battling the heavens also appeared. In the Nine Heavens imperial court outside the Palm realm, a strange phenomenon of the god of barbarians fighting against the heavens also appeared. As a matter of fact, after Ning Fan destroyed the stone door of the 8th floor, the entire Nine Heavens imperial court had undergone some strange changes. Following the shattering of the stone door, the entire Nine Heavens imperial court's palace quickly lost all its pressure. Without the obstruction of the palace's aura, the cultivators who were unable to ascend to the higher floors began to gather on the 9th floor with an unstoppable momentum. The space restriction here had also weakened quite a bit. Even shedding space cultivators could barely fly, but they couldn't fly too fast. The ancient immortal sovereign corpses that were hibernating on the higher levels were nowhere to be found. They no longer stopped the passing cultivators, which made it even more difficult to reach the top. I can't believe that with my Peak Rincong realm cultivation, I can actually ascend to the 9th level and fight for this ancient passage. A demon clan burly man excitedly rushed to the 8th floor. He turned into a wisp of gray smoke and sped toward the 9th floor. His divine ability was quite extraordinary. The ancient passage will definitely be obtained by our human race. We will certainly have a battle with the demon race on the 9th floor. Fellow Taoists, you must be careful. A human old monster with a sense-breaking realm cultivation base was followed by several shedding space cultivators. They had actually formed a small team and were advancing cautiously toward the 9th floor. I'm here to fish in troubled waters. I wonder if I can get some benefits after ascending to the 9th floor. Just now, I picked up a 5 million years old basil grass. Just like Mounz, there were also quite a number of cultivators who wanted to pick up some leftovers in the Nine Heavens imperial court. All of them excitedly rushed to the 9th floor. Nearly 100 experts of the human race and demon race arrived at the 9th floor of the Heavens imperial court one after another. There were even more cultivators who were rushing toward this place. It was unknown why there was an additional barrier on the 9th floor. It isolated everyone outside the area of the first palace, preventing them from entering the palace on the higher floors. That barrier was very strong. Colorful rays of light floated on it, making it as beautiful as a rainbow. However, it carried a powerful force that could stop immortal kings from advancing. Fortunately, this colorful barrier would become a little more illusory after every 15 minutes. Its power would decrease by a lot. Presumably, this barrier would not be able to last for too long. It would eventually disappear. As long as they wait for the barrier to disappear, the group of cultivators would still be able to reach the peak of the 9th floor. The 6 combinations Immortal Venerables, Ao Xian and the barbarian ancestors of the Fan clan were currently standing outside the barrier with their guards up. They could not enter the barrier and could only wait for it to disappear on its own. Among the barbarian ancestors of the Fan clan, the seventh ancestor was not outside the barrier. On the side of the human race, Miao Yen and Ning Fan were missing. On the side of the demon race, old ancestor Poisonous Dragon who had already died was missing. Humph! 6 combinations. Don't tell me you want to fight with me before the barrier disappears? Don't forget that I have the Brahma demon Jian with me. Last time, you were almost killed by this Jian. This time, do you want to suffer again? Ao Xian held the Brahma demon Jian in his hand and sneered at the 6 combinations immortal venerables. At the same time, he looked at the barbarian ancestors of the Fan clan with fear. The demon race and these barbarian ancestors were originally allies. However, Ao Xian had already noticed that these barbarian ancestors had other plans for the ancient passage. Their relationship as allies was not solid. Even though he was not afraid of 6 combinations, he did not want to fight with him before the barrier disappears. It would give these barbarian ancestors an opportunity to take advantage of him. Humph! Do you think I'm afraid of you just because you have the Brahma demon Jian? Don't forget that we have fellow Taoist Zhao on our side. As soon as Ao Xian mentioned Ning Fan, the 6 combinations immortal venerables became much more confident. He sneered back at Ao Xian. As soon as they heard Zhao Jian's name, be it Ao Xian or the barbarian ancestors of the Fan clan, their expressions changed. Obviously, they still remembered the terrifying ability that Ning Fan used to kill countless ancient immortal venerables. Cold sweat trickled down their foreheads. It's comparable to the attack of a saint. He killed hundreds and thousands of immortal venerables with just a single sword strike. Even if Zhao Jian isn't a saint, he is probably not far from it. 6 combinations is not worth mentioning, but that Zhao Jian is definitely not someone they can afford to offend. I didn't expect that the human race would actually have such a powerful force to intervene in the battle for the ancient passage. Despicable. Really despicable. Could it be that they have forgotten that the ancient passage collapsed because an immortal Emperor Realm old monster intervened in advance? The more ancient a secret place is, the more vulnerable it is to an immortal Emperor Realm old monster. The human race, on the other hand, did not send an immortal Emperor Realm expert this time. Instead, they directly sent someone with such terrifying combat power like Zhao Jian, who is even more ruthless than an immortal Emperor Realm expert. If the passage collapses again this time, it will be a huge loss to both the human race and the demon race. Despicable humans. Don't you know that going too far is as bad as falling short? Ao Xian cursed in his heart. What made him feel strange was that Zhao Jian should have already brought Miao Yen to the 9th floor by now. Where did they go? Why aren't they here? Could it be that they have entered the barrier? The human race is actually one step ahead of the demon race. It seems like it won't be easy to seize the ancient passage from the human race this time. Also, where did the 7th ancestor go? Could it be that he has also entered the barrier? The other barbarian ancestors were also secretly guessing. Just as the experts were confronting each other, the strange phenomenon of the barbarian god fighting against the heavens suddenly appeared in the sky of the 9th floor. Fight, fight, fight. Let the barbarian god wield his sword and fight against the heavens. The defying intent contained within those roars was too shocking, causing every single cultivator's heart to beat wildly. They were unable to suppress the shock in their hearts. Lu Ha, Ao Xian, and the other cultivators did not understand the meaning of this phenomenon. They were only shocked by the unusual aura. Only the barbaric ancestors of the Fan family understood the meaning of this phenomenon. They were shocked and their eyes burned with passion. Gradually, even their breathing began to quicken. It was actually the shadow of the god of berserkers fighting against the heavens. This was an anomaly that would only appear when the god of berserkers was born. The barbarian god. It was actually the barbarian god. Another god of berserkers was born in the ancient berserkers world. As long as one became a barbarian god, even if that person was just a vain opening junior, he could still command the barbarian cultivators of the ancient barbarian realm and easily destroy any cultivation clan below the 3rd step. As long as he became the god of berserkers, He would be able to enjoy the cultivation resources of the entire ancient berserker's world. He would also be able to use the berserker's luck to cultivate. Even a third-step saint had to be wary of the great power behind the god of barbarians. Even third-step sages coveted the ancient barbarian's providence. Just who was the lucky one to inherit the title of god of berserkers? How enviable! Every barbarian cultivator had the dream of becoming a barbarian god, just like how every mortal had the dream of becoming an emperor. The expressions of the few barbarian ancestors of the Fan family were filled with envy and jealousy. They could not wait to find the person who became the barbarian god and replace him. Unfortunately, they did not know that the person who was going to become the barbarian god was Ning Fan. If they knew about this, it was unknown how interesting their expressions would be. At the highest point of the 9th floor, countless stone statues stood under the illumination of the gray moon. At this moment, the 7th ancestor was half kneeling in front of the throne of the Een Ink stone statue, begging for something. As for the Een Ink stone statue, it was looking at the 7th ancestor coldly as if it was looking at a lowly ant. Speak, 7th generation barbaric ancestor of the Fan family. Why did you sacrifice your second primordial spirit to help me escape? What do you want? Chapter 941. Speak, 7th ancestor of the Fan family. You are willing to give up your second primordial spirit to help me escape. What is your goal? Ancestor Een Mo's stone body was indifferent. In his eyes, the 7th ancestor of the Fan family was just an ant, not worth mentioning. Fan family? Just a second-rate barbarian tribe of the ancient barbarian world. The 7th ancestor of the Fan family was just an insignificant person. Unlike the lowly Fan clan, Een Mo was a dignified god of the barbarian race. There were very few people who were worthy of his attention. His every word and action had a superior pressure that came from his bloodline. It put a heavy pressure on the 7th ancestor. Facing the questioning of ancestor Een Mo, the 7th ancestor did not dare to be disrespectful. He lowered his head even more and answered humbly, I have 3 requests. If you agree to all of them, I am willing to give up this body and become yours to help you escape. I will not regret it. 3 requests? You are just an ant. You want to talk terms with me? Een Mo's voice was cold, and the temperature dropped. That's right. Even if you are an ant, if you are lucky, you will have the chance to look down on the heavens. Don't you think so, Supreme Divinity? The 7th ancestor raised his head boldly and narrowed his eyes. A dragon in shallow water would be toyed with by prawns. A tiger on flat land would be bullied by dogs. In terms of strength, the 7th ancestor was not as strong as Een Mo. Even his true self, the immortal emperor, was not Een Mo's match. In terms of status, the 7th ancestor was just a barbarian ancestor of a second-rate force. Een Mo, on the other hand, was the high and mighty 9th god of barbarians. He had the power to punish the entire barbarian race and could suppress the 7th ancestor greatly. Ancestor Een Mo was sealed in the 9 heavens imperial court. Otherwise, as a barbarian, the 7th ancestor would not have dared to speak to Een Mo in such a tone. The air seemed to freeze. Invisible killing intent brewed around Een Mo, but it soon subsided. State your request. Een Mo's voice was emotionless. Seeing that Een Mo did not flare up, the 7th ancestor did not dare to act rashly again. He resumed his respectful tone. My first request is to take the ancient passage from the 9 heavens imperial court. According to my deduction, there are already more than 100 immortal emperors from the illusory world involved in this matter. With my second primordial spirit body, it is too difficult to snatch food from the hands of these heroes. I need the power of a hierarch to do this. If you manage to escape, you must help me fight for the ancient passage. Ancient passage, huh? Continue, Een Mo said non-committally. My second request is related to the immortal force in your body. In fact, these 3 requests were just a trick to confuse Een Mo. His real target was Een Mo himself. As long as his plan was successful, his second primordial spirit could merge with Enemo. At that time, he would be Enemo and he would be able to achieve the 3 requests. How about it? Is the Supreme Divinity willing to agree to my request? The 7th ancestor asked calmly. If I don't agree, what are you going to do? Enemo suddenly said mockingly. Don't agree? Doesn't the Supreme Divinity want to escape from this place? The god of Barbarian was sealed here by immortal Emperor Zido and lived a life worse than death. Doesn't the Supreme Divinity want to escape from this place and avenge Zido? The 7th ancestor frowned and said, I want to escape from this place even in my dreams. However, there are 2 things that you are wrong about. Enemo's playful voice echoed in the empty stone forest. Suddenly, a ray of starlight appeared in his left eye. In an instant, his left eye became bright as if it contained the entire starry sky. It gave people a profound feeling as if it could see through everything in front of it. His right eye became empty and dark without any spirit. Gradually, his right eyeball shattered and turned into stone chips that fell to the ground. Only the right eye socket was left. Not only that, a stream of black blood flowed out from his right eye socket and dripped on the ground in front of the throne. I have lost one eye and haven't recovered it yet. However, I can still see some clues. Do you think I can't see through your real scheme? You're wrong about this. At this moment, the Enemo stone statue only had its left eye. However, it could easily see through all the secrets on the 7th ancestor's body with this eye. The 3 requests you made are just a pretense. What you are really after is my life. These 7 chess pieces are your secret plan. The Enemo stone statue snorted and immediately, an invisible force enveloped the 7th ancestor. Without any warning whatsoever, the 7th patriarch coughed up a mouthful of blood and was sent flying backward. Furthermore, 7 beams of golden light flew out of his body, beyond his control. If you looked closely, you would see that they were actually 7 golden ghost stones. As soon as they appeared, they began to emit the glow of countless swastikas, giving off a feeling of solemnity and dignity. So they are chess pieces condensed by the power of karma. Moreover, this feeling seems to have fused with the bones of Buddhist cultivators. Buddhist cultivators cultivate the power of karma. This thing is enough to cut off the power of karma of the barbarian god's blessing technique. If I really use the blessing technique to seize your body, I will most likely be plotted against by these 7 chess pieces. Enemo said expressionlessly. The 7th ancestor was shocked. He didn't expect that his real scheme would be seen through by Enemo so easily. He also didn't expect that Enemo could make him vomit blood and fly backwards with just a thought. The 7 golden chess pieces hidden in his body were forced out and revealed themselves. This power had nothing to do with cultivation. It was the suppression of the bloodline. There was no mistake. The thing that sent him flying was the barbarian god Enmo's power of slaughter and punishment. Rumor has it that the barbarian god Enmo's power of punishment can be ranked in the top 3 of the 9 generations of barbarian gods. He has 2 punishment mountains. With just the power of punishment, he can make barbarian cultivators at the immortal emperor realm yield. However, wasn't he sealed by Zido? He shouldn't be able to use 10% of his power of punishment. How could he send me flying with just 1 strike? The 7th ancestor was shocked. It was obvious that he had missed a lot of things during this trip to the heavenly imperial court. Suddenly, the shadows of 3 golden mountains appeared in the sky. As soon as the 3 golden mountains appeared, the 7th ancestor felt that he couldn't win against Enmo's stone statue. It's 3 punishment mountains, not just 2. Ever since the first god of barbarian mountains, only the second god of barbarian has 3 punishment mountains. Moreover, the 3rd punishment mountain is only half formed. It's not complete. Enemo actually has 3 punishment mountains. He has surpassed the second god of barbarian. Among all the gods of barbarian in the past, he can be ranked 2nd. It seemed that Enmo's cultivation had not decreased during the countless years he was sealed. Instead, it had increased. The 7th ancestor groaned in his heart. He barely managed to stabilize his falling body. He wiped the blood off his face and said anxiously, "Divine Lord, please calm down. I've made a lot of mistakes. I shouldn't have harbored evil intentions towards you. I'm willing to compensate you for this. I've collected some barbarian souls. Although there aren't many of them, only about 700,000 of them, they're all survivors who survived the disaster. Their luck is much stronger than that of normal barbarians. I've spent many years researching an art that returns luck to its origin. As long as I sacrifice these barbarian souls, I can quickly restore my strength to its peak after I escape." The seventh ancestor received another cold snort from Mo's stone statue. In an instant, the seventh ancestor coughed up blood again and flew backwards. His aura continued to weaken. The seventh ancestor had a lot of methods to protect himself. However, under the attack of Mo's punishment stone statue, he had no power to fight back. As the god of barbarians, he had the power to kill and punish. He could punish any barbarian. This kind of punishment was unavoidable. It was precisely because of the existence of the power of punishment that the god of barbarians could stand high above the masses and not allow any barbarian to disobey him. With great difficulty, the seventh patriarch steadied himself once more. This time, he was not even able to stand. He clutched his chest with one hand and used the other to prop himself up on the ground. He was half kneeling on the ground, coughing up blood. He had actually been seriously injured by the power of punishment. The seventh patriarch cried out anxiously. Mo had once again activated the power of punishment in an attempt to kill him. Divine Lord, you can't kill me. If you kill me, you won't be able to find another body as perfect as me to perform the blessing technique. The seventh forefather looked up at Mo and forced himself to calm down. He was only the second primordial spirit of the Fate Master Celestial Emperor, so he would not suffer a great loss if he was killed. However, he was unwilling to die here without obtaining any benefits from Mo. He had originally wanted to scheme against Mo, but now that his plot had been exposed, he could only take a step back and abandon this body to help Mo escape. He believed that Mo would not bear to kill him. Mo had been sealed in the Nine Heavens Imperial Court by immortal Emperor Zido for countless years. During this period of time, the Nine Heavens Imperial Court had never appeared in the world, and no one had ever come here. This time, many cultivators had entered the Nine Heavens Imperial Court, but among these cultivators, there was almost no one who could become the body of Mo's blessing technique. Immortal Emperor Zido was too powerful. With Mo's cultivation, it was almost impossible for him to escape from his seal. The only chance of survival was to find a body and perform the strongest possession technique in the history of the barbarian race, the blessing technique of the barbarian god. This technique uses karma as a medium to carry out the possession technique. If it succeeds, even if this place is sealed by immortal Emperor Zido, the Divine Lord can still escape, abandon his sealed body, and be reborn. However, the prerequisite for the success of this technique is to find a perfect body with a high degree of compatibility. Before the Divine Lord became the barbarian god, he cultivated the cultivation of the barbarian race. After becoming the barbarian god, he received the blessing of Taitsong and possessed the bloodline of the Taitsong tribulation spirit. The Divine Lord cultivated the two powers of tribulation and barbarian at the same time. Therefore, the body that the Divine Lord is looking for to possess must at least have a certain degree of the two powers of tribulation and barbarian at the same time. Now, in the Nine Heavens Imperial Court, there are only a few cultivators who have the barbarian blood. They are all the ancestors of the Fan clan. Among them, the one with the highest cultivation of the two powers of tribulation and barbarian is the best body for the Divine Lord to possess. Killing this lowly person is definitely not a wise move. Mo looked at the seventh ancestor with disdain. After a long time, he said, "You think that I can't bear to kill you, so you have the guts to plot against me and take my life. You think that even if I see through your plot, I will let go of the past in order to escape. However, you are wrong. From the beginning, I never planned to use your second primordial spirit as a body to possess. I already have the most perfect body for you to possess. You're wrong about this again. Therefore, if you have nothing else to say, you can die now. Burn. As Mo shouted this word, the barbarian blood in the seventh ancestor's body started burning without any warning. Not good. With the cultivation of this body, I can't resist Mo's punishment power. I will die. The seventh ancestor's heart was filled with strong unwillingness, but more than that, he felt powerless. Just when he thought that his blood would burn to death, at the highest point of the ninth heaven's imperial court, in the sky above the stone forest, a shocking phenomenon of the barbarian god fighting against the heavens suddenly appeared. Fight, fight, fight. Let the barbarian god wield his sword and fight against the heavens. A murderous punishment power descended from the sky and collided with Mo's punishment power once again, letting out a muffled boom. In the sky above the stone forest, the three golden punishment mountain peaks of Mo were continuously hit by the new punishment power and cracks began to appear. More and more cracks appeared. Finally, the three punishment mountain peaks collapsed at the same time with a bang. The reason why the three mountains collapsed was because they could not withstand the new murderous punishment power. It's the shadow of the barbarian god fighting against the heavens. Once this phenomenon appears, it means that a barbarian god is being born. In the nine heavens imperial court, there are 10 barbarian gods being born. How can this be? This person has yet to become a true barbarian god, but the punishment power he possesses is already enough to collapse my punishment mountain. Just how many punishment mountains does this person have? Who is this person? His punishment power is actually still increasing. The shock in Mo's eyes increased. When the shadow of the barbarian god fighting against the heavens first appeared, the new barbarian god's punishment power was already twice of his. As time passed, the punishment power was still increasing. 3 times, 4 times, 6 times, 10 times, 12 times, 12 times of my punishment power. How could such a powerful barbarian god be born after the Tao Barbarian Mountain? Besides, why did this phenomenon appear in this place and why did it have to happen at this time? Mo could not calm down. He no longer had the intention to kill the seventh ancestor. The seventh ancestor was also lucky enough to survive because of this sudden phenomenon. What exactly happened in the nine heavens imperial court and who was going to become the 10th barbarian god? Mo did not know and neither did the seventh ancestor. Other than the strange eyeball, who would have thought that the person who was going to become the 10th barbarian god would be Ning Fan? In the space of the copper tower, time was still. 10 years inside the tower was just a moment in the outside world. On the divine ascension platform, Ning Fan walked up step by step. The path he walked was the divine Tao. Wherever he passed by, the barbarian statues that were kneeling on both sides of the divine Tao stood up. These barbarian statues were very strange. All of them were golden in color. They controlled the golden barbaric flash power and turned them into golden bows and golden arrows. Thousands of arrows were shot at Ning Fan. All of the arrows were wrapped in golden flames. Each of the fire arrows had the destructive power of an immortal venerable. The combined attack of 10 arrows could injure an immortal king. The combined attack of 100 arrows could injure an immortal emperor. Even a quasi-saint would have to retreat when thousands of arrows rained down on Ning Fan. Tens of thousands of arrows were shot at the same time. Killing intent soared to the sky and the weather changed. However, Ning Fan remained calm and did not care about those attacks at all. It was because he had the God-vanquishing shield to protect him. Those who don't have the God-vanquishing shield can also become the barbarian god after ascending to the divine Tao. However, they won't have too much punishment power. You, on the other hand, are different. Even though you only have one of the fragments of the God-vanquishing shield, it is the one with the strongest spirituality. Moreover, you have found the soul of the shield. With the help of the God-vanquishing shield, you can devour these thousands of arrows and cultivate the punishment power of slaughter that is comparable to mine. Other than me, none of the other 8 barbarian gods possess more than 3 punishment mountains. I'm looking forward to seeing how many of them you can create. The voice of the barbarian mountain rang in Ning Fan's ears. Ning Fan did not say anything else. He did not need to do anything either. He just walked up the divine Tao step by step. The God-vanquishing shield in his dantian automatically formed the God-vanquishing giant's defense outside his body. Rays of golden arrow light landed on the God-vanquishing giant's body. All of them strangely fused into the giant's body without any exception. It was as if they were being devoured. Everything was silent. The incoming arrow light kept fusing into the giant's body, causing the color of the God-vanquishing giant to be dyed with a hint of gold from its initial dark red color. With the addition of this trace of gold, the God-vanquishing giant gave people an unprecedented sense of majesty. In the sky above, the gigantic shadow of a golden mountain slowly took shape. That was the power that only the barbarian gods could control, the punishment mountain formed by the punishment power of slaughter. After condensing the first punishment mountain, Ning Fan clearly felt that there was an additional power in his body. What kind of feeling is this? It feels like I can easily decide the life and death of a barbarian. To punish any barbarian, punishment of slaughter. Punishment of slaughter. This kind of power had nothing to do with cultivation base or Tao attainment. It was a kind of dominance that a superior could have over an inferior. The divine ascension platform was so tall that it reached the heavens. The 4 million steps of the divine Tao seemed to have no end. The higher he went, the more difficult it became for him to move. He could not move too fast. Ning Fan slowly climbed up, forgetting the passage of time. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Ning Fan actually walked on this long divine Tao for a total of 12 months before he reached the end. When he reached the end and ascended the divine platform, there were already a total of 36 punishment mountains in the sky. The God-vanquishing giant that was protecting his body had completely turned into a dark golden color. It was an ancient golden color like the setting sun in a desert. The originally dark red God-destroying shield had also turned dark gold. The God-vanquishing shield has really been revived, although it's only a fragment. Dao Man Shan revealed a gratified expression and smiled. Next, you only need to carve your name on this heavenly Tao monument, and you will truly become the 10th god of berserkers. From now on, the rise and fall of the barbarians will all fall on your shoulders. Step by step, Ning Fan walked towards the center of the divine platform. When he reached the bottom of the heavenly Tao monument, he halted his footsteps and retracted his god-destroying giant shadow. A ray of golden light flew out from the heavenly Tao monument and turned into a golden carving knife that was a foot long. Slowly, it fell into Ning Fan's palm. Ning Fan stared at the heavenly Tao monument with a solemn expression. That small carving knife seemed to weigh 1,000 jin. He carved his name, and from then on, he became the 10th god of berserkers. From then on, he was a supreme existence. After carving his name, he would have to shoulder the responsibility and bear the karma. From today onwards, I, Ning Fan, am the god of the barbarian race. As long as I'm alive, all lives are alive. This was a promise. Ning Fan's eyes flashed with determination. He lifted the carving knife and carved his name on the heavenly Tao monument. After he carved his name, the heavenly Tao monument along with the entire divine ascension platform disappeared. It would only appear again when the next god of berserkers ascends the platform. No one knew who the new name on the heavenly Tao monument belonged to. However, at this moment, every barbarian in the world could feel that another god of berserkers had been born. So your name is Ning Fan. Let's go, little barbarian god Ning. Let's go to the 7th level of the barbarian tomb and meet the 4th generation ancestor. You have to be careful. She is just a shadow of a mountain and sea now. When she was alive, she only had 2 Xing mountains. She won't be able to withstand the punishment power of your 36 mountains. Better not accidentally kill her. Dao Man Shan warned Ning Fan solemnly. With a wave of his sleeve, he brought Ning Fan to the 7th level of the ancient barbarian tomb. Dao Man Shan had died a long time ago. Only the shadow of the mountain and sea was left. The might of the punishment power was no longer there. However, Ning Fan was different. He entered the 7th level of the barbarian tomb without making a sound. However, the moment he stepped into this level, Shizihua's mountain and sea shadow could not help but tremble in her heart. She even had the urge to kneel down in front of Ningfan. That heaven-shaking and earth-shattering bloodline power did not allow her to stand straight at all. Even if she was a barbarian god, she could not remain standing in front of Ningfan, who had 36 mountains. Humiliation. Humiliation. She had never knelt before anyone, let alone to the Tai Tsong tribulation spirit. Even if she slightly approved of Ningfan, she would never kneel to a Tai Tsong tribulation spirit. My body can be destroyed and my shadow can disappear. However, I will never kneel to this knee. Shizihua bit her lips unwillingly. She let the shadow of the mountain and sea disappear bit by bit, but she still refused to kneel. What's wrong with her? Ningfan had just ascended to become a god. He was still unable to control the additional punishment power. Naturally, he did not know that the punishment power that he unintentionally released had almost driven Shizihua to death. Daoman Shan. Shizihua. Little barbarian goddess Ning, are you pretending to be innocent and black-bellied? Chapter 942. After all, Ningfan was a person who had cultivated for many years. He instantly realized that Zizihua's abnormality was caused by himself. He couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed and apologized to Zizihua. I'm sorry. This junior has just obtained the power of massacre and punishment. I haven't fully grasped it yet. I've caused senior to be startled. His tone was neither servile nor overbearing, but it was rather polite. Now that they were both gods of the barbarian race, even if there were some misunderstandings between them in the past, Ningfan was not willing to humiliate this lady here and now. Moreover, Shizihua would rather die than kneel before the Tai Tsong Jieling. Ningfan was rather impressed by her integrity. That was why he addressed her respectfully as a senior. The 4th god of berserkers was the god of a destroyed kingdom, the god of death, the god of indomitable will. The broken sword stuck in her chest, the blood stains on her dress, the pride that said she would rather die than kneel, the poignant yet unyielding face, the beautiful figure that stood tall in the shattered royal city. All of these scenes were beautiful in a different way. The god of berserkers had died in battle to protect her people. No matter how ugly she was, she could still be considered beautiful. Besides, Shizihua was not an ugly woman to begin with. This woman was known as the most beautiful woman in the barbarian race, and she was indeed worthy of her name. Her beauty on the surface was only temporary. Only the beauty in her bones would not fade with time. These thoughts only flashed across Ningfan's mind. He did not think too much about it. He tried to control the punishment power in his body and suppress the agitated punishment might. Gradually, the punishment might that filled the entire 7th level of the barbarian's grave began to disappear. The might of the punishment of the 36 mountains was not to be underestimated, and it almost directly suppressed Shizihua's image of the mountains and seas. When the pressure subsided, Shizihua finally felt relieved. Her face was still a little pale. She looked at Ningfan with a complicated expression. After a long while, she said in an unnatural tone, "Thank you." Who would have thought that there would be a day where she would have to thank a grand firmament tribulation spirit? 36 punishment mountains? What a terrifying junior. In the history of the barbarians, perhaps only the 1st generation could achieve such a number. Previously, she was Ningfan's enemy. She even wanted to kill Ningfan, the grand firmament tribulation spirit, in the ancient barbarian tomb. Today, Ningfan had dramatically become the barbarian god. Shizihua didn't know how to face Ningfan after the change of their identities. The atmosphere suddenly became a little awkward. Speaking of which, Ningfan has yet to complete his 8th trial. Should I go easy on him? Let's reintroduce ourselves. This was the 4th god of berserkers, Shizihua. He was the 10th barbarian god, Ningfan. Alright, let's stop chatting here. Ning Shao barbarian god's 8th trial is not over yet. 4th generation king, hurry up and help him reduce his damage. There is one thing you must remember. No matter where little barbarian god Ning comes from, he is now the same as you, a god of our berserker tribe. You must not harbor any enmity towards him. This is an order from this old man, you must obey it. If you disobey my orders and harm him, then I won't mind using the power of my finger to personally wipe out your mountain and sea image. Dao Manshan looked at Shi Zihua meaningfully and warned. Shi Zihua was Ning Fan's descendant. Due to the hatred he had for the Tai Tsong tribulation spirit, Ning Fan's 8th trial was obviously much more dangerous and difficult than the others. Even though Ning Fan had rushed all the way to the 7th level of the ancient barbaric tomb, the final calamity of the 8th trial had yet to descend. It was still in Shi Zihua's hands. If Shi Zihua interferes with Ning Fan and summons the strongest calamity at all costs, Ning Fan would have a high chance of dying in the calamity even if he had the protection of the God-exterminating shield and the might of the punishment of the 36 mountains. Since Dao Manshan had promised Ning Fan to protect him, he would certainly keep his promise. He would not allow Shi Zihua to recklessly summon the calamity and kill Ning Fan. He did not expect Shi Zihua to go easy on Ning Fan. All he wanted was for her to be fair and treat Ning Fan equally. If the 8th trial that Shi Zihua summons is at least at the level of an ordinary barbarian cultivator, he believed that Ning Fan would be able to get through it easily. I won't. I know what to do. He has already become a barbarian god. He is the hope of our tribe. I won't harm him anymore. Shi Zihua let out a faint sigh and agreed. Shi Zihua still knew what to do. She had already seen through Ning Fan's character and innate talent. With Ning Fan around, the barbarian tribe might still have a chance to prosper. Even if Ning Fan is a Tai Tsong tribulation spirit, she would also try her best to discard her prejudice against him. 10th generation, come closer. Next, I will send you the final calamity of the 8th trial. Shi Zihua wanted to smile at Ning Fan, but she could not do so no matter what. She could try her best to suppress the prejudice in her heart, but she could not disguise herself and give Ning Fan a hypocritical smile. Her hatred towards the Tai Tsong tribulation spirit had melted into her bones. She could accept Ning Fan psychologically, but she could not smile physically. Senior's hostility towards me seems to be entirely because of my identity as a Tai Tsong tribulation spirit, right? Ning Fan was not in a hurry to get through the 8th trial. That's right. I do mind your identity as a tribulation spirit. However, since you have already become a barbarian god, I will try my best to discard those prejudices. You don't have to do that. There is one thing that Senior might have misunderstood. Even though I possess the tribulation blood, I am not the true Tai Tsong tribulation spirit. I am a purple dipper cultivator. From a certain point of view, I might be considered as the enemy of the tribulation spirit clan. Ning Fan said indifferently. Divine, demon, devil and tribulation were just his powers. They did not determine his race. If he must put a label on himself, he would put the words Purple Dipper Cultivator on it. He did not know much about the history of the Purple Dipper immortal domain. However, he had already made many guesses along the way. The Purple Dipper immortal domain should have already been destroyed. The enemy that destroyed the Purple Dipper immortal domain was most likely the Tribulation Spirit clan. He was born in the Rain World. He was a cultivator in immortal sovereign Zido's dream. He was the successor of ancient chaos, and he had once regarded immortal sovereign Zido as his teacher. Without a doubt, Ning Fan was a Purple Dipper cultivator. The Tribulation Spirit clan that destroyed the Purple Dipper immortal domain would only be his enemy. What did you say? You are not the true Tai Tsong tribulation spirit. You are a Purple Dipper cultivator. Shi Zihua's eyes suddenly lit up. When she died, the ancient barbarian world had completely fallen. At that time, immortal sovereign Zido had yet to attain his Dao and the Purple Dipper immortal domain had yet to be established. However, it did not mean that she did not know much about immortal sovereign Zido like Dao Manshan. On the contrary, she had always been paying attention to the rise and fall of the barbarian race. Even after countless years had passed since her death, she was still inquiring about the news of the 3 great true worlds. She knew that after her death, the barbarian race had completely become the slaves of the Tai Tsong tribulation spirit. All the barbarian gods in the future had become the servants of the tribulation spirit. She had heard that a very powerful immortal sovereign Zido had appeared in the future. He could even fight to a draw with the legendary strongest being in the mortal world, the Lord of Tribulation will. With his own strength, immortal sovereign Zido had killed the two immortal sovereigns Ziwei and Beidou and unified the Purple Dipper immortal domain. Then, he became the strongest being in the defying mortal world, one of the three great true worlds. However, some things happened later that caused the entire Purple Dipper immortal domain to be destroyed by the invasion of the tribulation spirit. The cultivators of the Purple Dipper immortal domain were the most courageous group of cultivators in the three great true worlds. When the tribulation spirit invaded, the entire domain would usually die in battle. It was rare for anyone to surrender. Even if there were cultivators who were lucky enough to survive, all of them would regard the Tai Tsang tribulation spirit as their mortal enemy. They would use all their strength to fight against the Tai Tsang tribulation spirit until the end. They would never compromise. Because of this, even though the Purple Dipper immortal domain had been destroyed, the tribulation spirit clans still regarded the cultivators of the Purple Dipper immortal domain as their #1 enemy. This young man actually said that he was a cultivator of the Purple Dipper immortal domain. He was clearly the mortal enemy of the Tribulation Spirit clan, but he also possessed the bloodline of the Tribulation Spirit clan. Are you really not a cultivator of the Tribulation Spirit clan? No. Ning Fan shook his head and said, Is that so? Shi Zihua suddenly let out a long sigh of relief. At this moment, she really did not have any prejudice against Ning Fan anymore. Not only that, but she also felt a little apologetic towards him. Previously, she thought that Ning Fan was a cultivator of the Tribulation Spirit clan. That was why she kept trying to kill him. Now, however, it was clear that Ning Fan was not a cultivator of the Tribulation Spirit clan at all. After going through so much trouble, she realized that she had killed the wrong person. Since she was wrong, she must make up for it. Shi Zihua, was a person who clearly distinguished between gratitude and grudges. She would never let anyone down. Since that was the case, she had already thought of how she was going to kill Ning Fan one last time. I, Shi Zihua, never turn my back on anyone. You seem to have cultivated a very impressive enchanting technique. Since you are a cultivator of enchanting techniques, I will give you a great fortune. Shi Zihua's words were clear and resonant. For some reason, her face was slightly flushed, but her expression was incomparably firm. She seemed to be implying something. Ning Fan did not know the deeper meaning behind Shi Zihua's words, but Dao Manshan did. His eyes flashed with a hint of shock, and he scolded. Fourth generation. Are you sure you want to do this? If you do this, not only will you lose all your reputation, even this mountain and sea shadow will also collapse. I, Shi Zihua, never turn my back on anyone. Shi Zihua answered indifferently. Her eyes scanned the empty 7th level of the barbarian tomb. Suddenly, she waved her hand and a violent gust of wind blew across the entire 7th level. As soon as the gust of wind blew past, all the corpses of the barbarian cultivators who were in deep slumber in this place disappeared. No one knew where they had been kept by her. I don't want outsiders to witness this matter. Can you please move to the 6th level for the time being? Shi Zihua said to Dao Manshan. Since you have already made your decision, you have to bear all the consequences. Do you understand? Dao Manshan suddenly sighed. I won't regret it. Please move to the 6th level. Shi Zihua said firmly. But since you won't regret it, I won't say anything else. Dao Manshan looked at Ning Fan with a complicated expression. With a flash, he directly disappeared from the 7th level of the barbarian tomb. In the blink of an eye, only Ning Fan and Shi Zihua were left in the empty 7th level of the tomb. There was no one else. Ning Fan's eyes turned slightly solemn. He did not know what kind of riddle Shi Zihua and Dao Manshan were talking about. However, he also realized that Shi Zihua had made an important decision. There's no one here to disturb us anymore. However, the scenery here isn't very good. There's no atmosphere here. Shi Zihua once again waved her hand, and the scenery around them changed. The desolate ground suddenly became filled with life. Lush green grass grew out of the ground, and the dried-up river was filled with flowing water. In the blink of an eye, the 7th level had become a world of birdsong and fragrant flowers. Next, it will be the last killing tribulation of your 8th trial. Take care. Shi Zihua raised the corner of her lips and suddenly gave Ning Fan an amorous smile. She used a supreme bewitching technique in that smile. Even with Ning Fan's resistance against bewitching techniques, he could still sense a life-threatening crisis from Shi Zihua's smile. I have cultivated the bewitching technique all my life, but I have never given myself to any man. It's because once I give myself to anyone, my power will be taken away by that person. Your bewitching technique is very strong. The person who created this technique must also be a peerless expert. Shi Zihua did not know that the bewitching technique Ning Fan cultivated was the yin-yang transformation created by ancient chaos. Her bewitching technique cultivation base was definitely not lower than ancient chaos. Unfortunately, when she was born, ancient chaos had not been born yet. Thus, the 2 generations of bewitching technique experts had never seen it before. The power of the bewitching technique originates from the control of desire. There are 5 types of desire, which are called the 5 skandhas. They are appearance, perception, thought, action, and consciousness. Those who have the 5 skandhas are not afraid of the bewitching technique. However, those who can achieve this are rare even among saints. You can achieve this. However, the jade locket in your body can give you the power to have the 5 skandhas completely empty. It's really a supreme treasure. With this treasure, it will be very difficult for me to bewitch you. Thus, I need to temporarily seal this treasure. All of a sudden, Shi Zihua made a strange hand seal. At this moment, the connection between Ning Fan and the yin-yang locket was forcefully cut off. The yin-yang locket could no longer protect Ning Fan's Dao heart and help him resist the bewitching technique. Next, Ning Fan had no choice but to use his own cultivation base to resist Shi Zihua's supreme bewitching technique. Inverse relic, appear. Shi Zihua suddenly opened her mouth and spat out a ray of pink light. It was actually a small piece of pink crystal. This item was somewhat similar to the relics of Buddha cultivators. However, most of the relics of Buddha cultivators were golden in color while the relic of Shi Zihua was pink. It was not a relic but an inverse relic. If the relic of Buddha cultivators is cultivated to a certain extent, it could allow those powerful Buddha cultivators to reach the 5 skandhas completely empty. As for the inverse relic, it was the exact opposite. It had the powerful power to make the enemy sink into their desires. At the moment when the inverse relic flew out, Ning Fan felt a buzzing sound in his mind. After that, he lost all consciousness. His eyes became dazed, and within that daze, flames of lust were burning. Shi Zihua approached Ning Fan step by step. She tiptoed and hooked her arms around Ning Fan's neck. Then she kissed him softly. That kiss was like a catalyst, causing the flames of lust in Ning Fan's eyes to burn even more fiercely. He suddenly pulled out the broken sword from Shi Zihua's chest and threw it to the ground. Then his body involuntarily pulled Shi Zihua into his arms as if he wanted to crush her into pieces. What a good Ning Fan! First, he killed the 7th barbarian god Ta Gu with his sword. Then, he pulled the 4th barbarian god Shi Zihua into his arms. Shi Zihua's delicate body trembled slightly after being hugged so fiercely. She wanted to escape from his embrace, but she did not do so in the end. Shi Zihua would never let anyone down. Her mountain and sea shadow did not carry much of her true body's power. However, if she could pass it to Ning Fan, it would greatly improve his bewitching technique. No matter how Ning Fan's large hands wandered all over her body, she did not retreat in the end. Even when her clothes were peeled off piece by piece, she did not regret it. Ning Fan felt like he was having a long dream. In the dream, he was hugging a soft and fragrant body whose face could not be seen clearly. They were entangled with each other. Her moans were so alluring. Each of her moans seemed to have a special magical power, causing the flames of lust in Ning Fan's body to grow stronger and stronger. It was impossible for him to wake up from that state. What a terrifying bewitching technique! He had been cultivating bewitching techniques all his life. However, it was his first time being unable to extricate himself from the hands of another bewitching cultivator. In terms of attainments in bewitching techniques, Shi Zihua might be slightly stronger than Great Emperor Ancient Chaos. After all, Ancient Chaos was good at 2 cultivation techniques. Those who have achieved the emptiness of 5 skandhas would not feel joy or sorrow. Each of them was like an otherworldly guest who had cut off their ties with the mortal world. Ning Fan was obviously not that kind of person. Without a cultivation base that surpassed the incipient saint realm and without the emptiness of 5 skandhas, how did he wake up? How did he overcome the desires in his heart? However, she did not know that Ning Fan would never achieve the emptiness of 5 skandhas in his entire life. I can only achieve this because there are people who have given up all their desires. Ning Fan, on the other hand, refused to give up anything and could not abandon the mortal world. The reason why Ning Fan could wake up was not because he had overcome the desires in his heart. Instead, it was because he had accepted all those desires and controlled them with his heart. This was a realm that was different from the emptiness of 5 skandhas. This was called persistence. Nothing is impossible. Your bewitching technique is indeed powerful. However, if I let go of my heart and don't suppress it, it is still possible for me to regain some of my rationality. Ning Fan's breathing became heavier and heavier. The flames of lust in his eyes did not diminish. Instead, it grew stronger. He pinched Shi Zihua's pair of soft breasts. Immediately, Shi Zihua, who was below him, let out a soft moan in pain. However, there was a different kind of comfort that lingered in her heart. You are very beautiful. If I have intercourse with you, I believe it will be an extremely pleasant thing. Ning Fan's naked words made Shi Zihua's face turn even redder. Isn't this man too shameless? How could he say such a shameful word as intercourse? However, it's a pity. If I have you now, I believe this mountain and sea shadow of yours will immediately collapse. Green light flashed in Ning Fan's eyes. He actually relied on the power of the 2nd level of the heaven realm to suppress the flames of lust that had been controlled in his eyes. If I have you, you will be my woman. As for me, I don't have the habit of letting my woman die in front of me. Therefore, I don't want you. I don't want you. Shi Zihua's heart was filled with anger. She was actually despised by Ning Fan. In the ancient barbarian world, there were countless people who wanted to get intimate with her. She had willingly delivered herself to Ning Fan, but he actually despised her and did not want her. Putting aside her beauty and her bewitching technique, the benefits that he could get from her should be enough to move people's hearts. Ning Fan should be able to see that if he has her, he will be able to obtain the rest of her power. Why did he reject her? Even if he is cold-blooded and heartless, he would not push her away for the sake of pursuing power, right? Ning Fan turned around and stood up. With a wave of his hand, he put on his robes again. At the moment when he completely regained his consciousness, he had already passed the 8th trial. Of course, even if he was not conscious, he would still be able to pass the 8th trial because Shi Zihua had obviously decided to go easy on him. Unfortunately, Shi Zihua did not expect that Ning Fan would be able to wake up from her bewitching technique with his own willpower. Are you still not going to put on your clothes? I have already passed the 8th trial. Senior Dao Man Shan will be back soon. Do you want him to see you like this? Ning Fan's gaze swept across Shi Zihua. At this moment, her body was as limp as mud. She was lying on the grass. Her snow-white body was covered with green and purple kiss marks. Without a doubt, he was the one who did it. When he thought of this, the way Ning Fan looked at Shi Zihua actually became a little complicated. It didn't matter how the erotic affair started or how it ended. He and Shi Zihua still had an unclear relationship after all. This crazy woman. Why would she throw herself at me like this? If I didn't wake up in time, the image of the mountains and seas in Shi Zihua's painting would definitely disappear today. What is this? After rolling on the grass with this woman, there seems to be something extra in my body. Ning Fan inspected his body and realized that there was something extra in his dantian. After passing the 8th trial, there were 5 drops of ancestral realm barbarian blood in Ning Fan's body. They were being devoured by the calamity blood in his body. At this moment, the extra thing in his body was not just the ancestral blood. There was also a round and translucent pink crystal the size of an egg. Due to the addition of this item, his cultivation base in the art of bewitching seemed to have improved tremendously. Moreover, he also gained some abilities related to the art of bewitching. This is the inverse relic. Ning Fan's expression changed. This was the inverse relic that was exactly the same as Shizuo's. What a pity! I didn't manage to complete the final step. I can only impart the power to condense the inverse relic to you. If only I could impart all of my power to you. Shizihua was filled with regret. She glared at Ning Fan angrily. She had put aside her sense of shame and rolled on the grass with Ning Fan for half a day. She had done a lot of things on a large scale, but she still failed to achieve her initial goal. She had a feeling that her efforts were in vain. She felt like she had suffered a great loss. Of course, her heart was also filled with mixed feelings. She, a person who had died many years ago, actually rolled on the grass with a junior whom she met for the first time in her future life. I'm afraid she won't be able to forget this memory even if she wants to. Achoo, achoo, achoo. In the outside world, the eyeball monster was sneezing one after another. No one knew what organ he was using to sneeze. Aya aya. That stinky brat has already passed the 8th trial for more than a year. Why isn't he out yet? Speaking of which, that brat is really lucky. He could stay together with the goddess of my heart for an entire year. I'm really envious of him. I'm so envious that I want to strangle him to death. If the eyeball monster knew that Ning Fan had already done a lot of shameful things with the goddess of his heart, he would probably be even more envious. They would probably go crazy with envy and tear Ning Fan's body into 1,000 pieces. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.